Good afternoon, everyone. We'll call the meeting to order. Welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting of Tuesday, January 16th, 2024. Just a reminder that this is a Committee of the Whole meeting and no decisions will be made here today. There will only be recommendations that will go to our next regular council meeting on Tuesday, January 30th, 2024 for consideration. Calling meeting to order. Can I have an adoption of the agenda? Councillor Perry, Councillor Ashmore, all in favor? And that's passed. Deputations. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest on anything on the agenda today?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have disclosure when it comes to the water report and audit. Any discussion on emergency management or the auditor authors Intertech SAI Global will be a conflict. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are any others during the course of the meeting, advise the chair will deal with them accordingly. Moving on to deputations, item 4.1 is Ms. Krista Blanchard speaking on the Backyard Chicken Pilot Program. Is Ms. Blanchard here?
Yes, I'm here.
Online?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. There you are. Go ahead.
Hi.
You have 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. My name is Krista. First of all, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me today. My name is Krista. I am a mom of 4 young, beautiful children. And I just want to start with a little backstory of how I got here today. If you told me 3 years ago that I'd be speaking in front of council defending birds, I would have called you crazy. Around 3 years ago, my family lived in a townhouse with a backyard barely big enough to fit the kids' swing set. As our family and our love for health and wellness grew, we wanted to change. We wanted more space for gardens, more privacy, and a bigger home. So we found our dream home on a quiet street in Little Britain and packed our bags. We were so thrilled and excited for this change to live on O'Reilly Lane. The possibilities for our little homestead seemed endless. Several homes had chicken coops, one of which had a rooster and eggs for sale. We started buying our eggs from a neighbor down the street and decided, why not do this ourselves, have hens of our own, and become more self-sufficient. This was around the time that kids were learning from home. We were homeschooling, or at least making a solid effort. We thought what a cool lesson it would be to raise some chicks into laying hens so our kids could see exactly where our food came from. This actually ended up backfiring once the kids actually realized where the eggs came from. Everyone decided they no longer liked eggs. But we did get past that, thank goodness. Providing proper nutrition to our family is something we value a lot. I never would have imagined that these hens would be such an important part of our family. I know this might sound crazy to some, but we love them like pets, outdoor pets, of course. We currently have 10 hens. We are a family of 6 and easily eat 2 eggs a day on average. So 10 hens is the perfect amount. It allows us to share some goodness to friends and family as well. For the past 3 years, we've fed myself, my husband, and our four children delicious organic food from our backyard, including eggs from our hens, and we're extremely proud of this. We have also been able to help friends and family during these tough economic times. A carton of eggs isn't much, but every little bit can help when someone is struggling. Giving back to our community and helping where we can is something we feel very strongly about. With the extremely high rising cost of living, groceries especially, we rely on these eggs not only to help nourish our bodies, but to cut some of the costs and food for security. I truly believe that establishing food security is a great idea for everyone. I know a lot of people would agree with that. We've seen the shelves go bare, and we are hearing of regular, hardworking families struggle to put food on the table for their family. It's a concern for a lot of people. We don't own any roosters. We don't profit from our eggs. We're not in the egg selling business. Our hens are well taken care of, and their coop is kept very clean. Earlier in the fall, we had Councillor Charlie McDonald stop in for a visit, and he can attest to that. The hens are not able to roam our property. There were a couple of times when they did get out, which was frustrating for us, but also, as new hen owners, a learning curve. They now have designated space that keeps them safe and secure. You wouldn't know we had chickens if you were walking by our house. They are very quiet, contained, and happy. I think it's important for families to start growing their own food if they have the opportunity to. I truly believe that by allowing families like ours the ability to grow food, it could help our community with the ongoing inflation and provide food security for so many. Regular families who don't own a farm or have a large property are looking for alternatives. I understand rules are rules. We live on a beautiful and spacious 0.47 of an acre, just shy of the half acre, which would allow us to be a part of the chicken coop project introduced a few years ago. We are looking for some grace and compassion on this matter. It would be devastating to our whole family to have to say goodbye to these hens. We don't want to upset anyone, especially any of our neighbors. We are very understanding people and are willing to adjust accordingly in order to keep our hens and to keep the neighborhood happy. In closing, we are asking for the chicken coop pilot project to be revisited and amended. Everyone deserves to eat nutritious food from their own backyards. Everyone deserves food security. We are asking to have the land required in order to have hens decreased and the amount of hens allowed increased from the current 4 to 10 hens. Thank you so much for taking the time to hear what I had to say today. I hope we're able to come to a conclusion that can really put some positive change into our town that will benefit our family as well as other members of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. If you'd stay there, and we'll see if council has any questions for you. Council, any questions for the deputy? Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, through you. Thank you, Krista, for your presentation. I visited your property there in the summertime, and I just want to let you know that the pilot program is over, but it's being revisited, and something's coming to council in February that might address some of the issues that you're talking about.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Perhaps you could send Councillor McDonald a copy of your presentation, and we can use it when this program comes to council later in the year.
Absolutely, I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming today. I have a motion to receive the presentation. Councillor McDonald, Councillor Richardson. All in favor? That was Deputy Mayor McDonald, sorry. I'll get it right after about 6 months. Moving on, our next presentation is a request to purchase the Shoreline Road allowance adjacent to the Grove Road in Fenelon Township. In person, we have Mr. Shane Baker, and on Zoom, we have Mr. Michael Brooks. You have 5 minutes, Mr. Baker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council and staff, for this opportunity to come before you today. Just quickly, introductions. Myself, I am the current president of the Cameron Lake South Shore Cottagers and Residents Association, and I'm here representing that association. I'm also the Chief Administrative Officer for the town of Ajax, so it's kind of interesting being on this side of the podium. Michael Brooks is with me as well, and he is the past president for the association and has served as a real estate lawyer for the past 30 years with the Bay Street firm, and now runs the National Association of Canada's largest institutional public and private real estate investment and development companies. So just quickly, some of the dates that are in the agenda. On August 15th, 2023, we met with City Realty Services staff and presented 17 applications from our membership. The Land Management Committee met on September 11th and considered those applications. And a few weeks later, we all received letters from Realty Services saying their requests had been denied. So on behalf of the 17 applicants, we are here to ask that Council reconsider staff's position for the following reasons. I presented some photos for members of council, so you have some type of an idea as to the properties that we're talking about here. As you can see from the photos, these lots are the waterfront properties across the road from the owner's properties. The plan of subdivision that I have, that I got when I purchased my property at 109 Grove Road, is dated December 15th, 1923. So that subdivision has been there for just over 100 years, which I keep hearing from all of the different residents and owners along the road that, you know, these properties have been handed down from throughout their family and been cared for, and they've taken great care of all those properties for 100 years. Driving down the road, you wouldn't know that it's actually city land. It looks like, and many people think that they are waterfront properties, but the road, as you can see in the photos, separates our properties from the city's waterfront properties. There are no beaches or public access points along the road that will be affected by any sale, and a precedent has been set in the past in that a number of owners on Grove Road, albeit maybe before amalgamation, have previously purchased their shoreline road allowance, and there's been no issues or interference with CD maintenance or works that need to be done on the road there as well. So a number of the members wanted me to speak to some of the confusion that they had. The position put forward by staff in the letter that we all received relates to a concern about risk of damage to the road and the city being able to maintain the road. Obviously, the residents understand those concerns about access and keeping the road in good shape, and frankly, it's in our best interest that the road maintain in good shape so that we maintain access to our properties. However, we're further confused because we recently in 2022 signed a limited service agreement with the city, which speaks to the very limited amount of services that the city will provide, which is snow clearing and two gradings a year. And in fact, the summer after we signed that limited services agreement, there was a hole in the road, washout from a culvert, that I called city staff about, and they reminded me that that was not work that they will do and that we had to do that work. They were very good on the phone with me, but they were not willing to come out and look at it. I even asked if they can come out because I said, okay, well, I want to make sure we repair it to whatever standards the city would like. Can you come out and show us what gravel we should use or how you would want it done? And we were told, no, you need to do it on your own. So we're kind of confused as to the position that they put forward was that they want to maintain access to the road to be able to do work, but the limited service agreement speaks contrary to that. Further, as a note of confusion, at the July 25th, 2023 council meeting, staff brought forward a report, RS 2023-11, entitled Land Strategy Update. The report noted that council gave a revenue target for staff of $6 million in land sales between 2015 and 2024 inclusive, and at that time, staff reported that they expected a shortfall of over $1.2 million. But this could change as there could be any unexpected requests for shoreline road allowance sales. And that being the case, considering our association made it clear we were willing to negotiate easements or whatever was required to alleviate staff's concerns, we were surprised that there was no attempt to discuss opportunities for resolution with us to enable these sales, which would then also assist in achieving the revenue targets set by council. At this time, I'm going to pass over the rest of our presentation to Michael Brooks to speak on how our members have made application to purchase, why our members have made application to purchase these lands, why it's so important to us, and how we may resolve these issues.
Yeah, and we're getting short on time, so Mr. Brooks, if you could be economical in your words, please.
Thank you. I was actually going to ask for a 1-minute extension because I'll be done in 1 minute, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, good. I guess I'm the lawyer involved here, and I see the solution to the concerns of the city as fairly trivial. Easements are standard practice, restrictive covenants are standard practice, and if we applied this criteria to the city of Toronto, i.e. we're worried about the road and therefore we're not going to convey the other side of it, there would be zero development in the GTA. I mean, every excavation in the GTA has an easement for support. Most plans of subdivision have cross easements for access and maintenance and repair. I mean, this is a pretty simple fix, and this is a 100-year-old road that's never needed major work. It's on bedrock. We're on the Canadian Shield on that road. So I think this is solvable, and what we're really asking the council to do is see if they could direct Realty Services staff to meet with us, and perhaps Robin as well, to negotiate a reasonable compromise to enable the sale of these properties to proceed. That's it.
Thank you. Stick around and we'll see if council has any questions. First, can I get a motion to receive? Councillor Perry, Councillor Joyce, and questions? Councillor Warren, did you have a question? Thank you. Any other? Councillor Perry, did you have a question?
Sure, Mayor, thank you. And just a note of support as the ward councillor. I've dealt with the association since being elected, and I know that this sale was on the radar during your term as councillor as well, Mayor. My support stems from basically, as Mr. Beers has said, there'll be nothing will change. This is where the road has looked since I was a kid. I would have argued with you that it was owned by the city. No, it's been, I would have argued that it was the owner's land already, their waterfront on the other side of that road. And I guess my just only question would be, from what I hear you saying, you're amenable to an easement or an undertaking to not build or to not work on the lots within a certain footage of the road because it's not assumed and it's in your best interest to keep that road solid. Is that correct? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. When we met with Realty Services staff in August, we made it clear when we submitted the 17 applications, I met with all of the applicants, understanding that these would all be individual negotiations with the city, but made it clear to all of them that this was a concern that we had heard from city staff, and this was something that they needed to be willing to negotiate, and they all absolutely agreed. At that time, we were talking about a complete easement right across the waterfront to allow staff to be able to do whatever works. We heard back that an easement wasn't sufficient, and that, so then in speaking with Michael, there's opportunities for restrictive covenants to restrict any building and setbacks and so on. So we absolutely believe there's a legal path here to be able to get this done, and the residents are very amenable. The one point that I wanted to make was in the letter it said that staff felt that a compromise was the lease agreement, the 5-year lease agreement or encroachment agreement that's available from the town. The problem with that is, and the reason why we're here and why this is such a big deal for the residents, is our residents have found it significantly hard to sell their property when it comes time for them to want to move out of their property. People coming up from the city of Toronto or whatever, I bought my property because I've been coming here since a kid, and I know that road's been like that forever, so it didn't bother me that the city owned the other side of the road. But two specific sales this past summer, as an example, they sat for months and months because the potential purchasers would ask, what's the deal with the waterfront? Do you own the waterfront? Do you not own the front? No, the city owns the waterfront. Well, how does that work? Does that mean they can come in? It creates a fear for potential purchasers. It was so bad, actually, my one neighbor on the one side had her property for sale the whole summer, never did sell it. And every time I went to go out the door, I had to look out the window, because if I walked out the door and the real estate agent was there with some potential buyers, they would keep me standing there talking for half an hour about what's going on with the waterfront, because they were so worried about what happens with it. That's the motivation for us being here today.
Yep. Councillor Perry, you had a follow-up?
Yeah, just for all those reasons, Mayor, this is why as ward councillor, this is very straightforward for me, all the provisions that have been made, and also that with no changes coming forward, I just wanted to make sure that I thanked Shane and Michael for their time today, and look forward to moving towards a resolution on this issues for all those good reasons, and the fact that there are no public or city interests or activities on the land currently is also part of the straightforwardness, in my view, of this claim. So thank you very much again for coming.
Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you again for coming today, and just listening to you, fleshed out quite a few different ideas, and reading through the deputation and recognizing that there is 17 applications on this particular road. Would it not be prudent for us to refer this back to staff for some additional information?
We can do that at council. Anything else? Seeing nothing. Thank you very much for coming today. Thank you for your presentation. It will come to council at the end of the month, and you will hear back from us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All in favor? And that's passed. Our next deputation is an entrance to a severed property off Highway 121 Kinmount. Mr. Keith Strata, I believe it is.
Stata, S-T-A-T-A. Don't add anything else.
Thank you.
I was going to read something today, but I decided just to ramble on here. The fact of the matter is that I shouldn't even have to be here. This property was legally severed in 1977. It had an entrance permit, it had health approval, and it was surveyed, and it's on the city maps. I sold it, and I bought it back a decade later. I paid tax on it ever since. Along came COVID. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Keith Stata. I'm 76 years old. I have Highland Cinema in Kinmount, Ontario, which has operated for 45 years and has 50,000 people a year coming to it. It's been written up all over the world. There's a documentary which is going to be premiering in Santa Barbara, California International Film Festival on it next month. We bring a lot of people in, and COVID was horrendously damaging. $180,000 for 2 years of sitting closed waiting to see what was going to happen next. So I decided to sell the lot to pay off my CEBA loan, which by the way is due on Friday. So okay, the property went up for sale. I put a very reasonable price on it, given what the prices were in COVID. It went for $45,000. The money was in the bank, ready to be transferred into my account when the entrance problem came up. And then ad nauseum discussions went on with your staff for over a year. The nuts and bolts of it is some bylaw that you passed in 2017 apparently prohibits that entrance. So numerous suggestions were made about alternate entrances. There is no alternate entrance. This is not a field. This is a ravine that is 60 feet across and 30 feet deep. The cost is outlined in the documents I gave you, which hopefully you have all read. There were options. I looked at all of the options, wasted my time for 6 months on the one trying to get a price. The cost of building the causeway, and in particular because the city has a deteriorating 3-foot culvert under Highway 121, which they refuse to fix, is excessive to the point the lot is worthless. The only other access would be through Block R, and that's a joke because I talked to a retired county planner about that. I could give access to that lot and 4 new lots there, but he said, you know, by the time you screw around with that, it's just not worth it unless you're going to develop the whole property. And with regards to Block R, your staff tried to tell me I needed an entrance permit. Just for the record, Block R has existed with an entrance since 1930. In 1973, I paid Harry Austin money to put gravel and to grade that road, which was in constant use between 73 and 97. I'm not getting an entrance permit. I put a new gate on it. It's been there forever. So back to the other problem. There's no viable entrance to this lot. When we went to put it up for sale, I'd given the city permission to dump 150 loads of debris from the main street on my property in 2009. Somewhere along the road, you had a contractor working at Diane Austin's taking out the sidewalk when they blasted it. I wasn't there that day. He managed to dump it all on the wrong lot. It cost $3,000 to remove that debris before we could put the lot up for sale. So had the entrance been honored, as it should have been, $45,000 would have been in my pocket to pay off the CEBA loan. This matter would be closed. Your staff has constantly brought up all sorts of excuses why the driveway can't be there. It is a perfectly safe driveway. 2 driveways on that corner have existed for 120 years. I'm 76. I've lived on the corner my whole life. There have been no accidents in my memory involving a driveway, someone exiting or entering, and the highway. Everybody that missed the corner either went down the railway tracks, rolled over, or whatever. Then the next problem is this massive guardrail that all of a sudden appeared. I sent you guys a picture the other day. You should have it on your computers. This is a shot of the area in 1975. You'll notice that there's no guardrail. There was no guardrail on that corner for 120 years until you built this massive guardrail right across in front of my property. I was after you for 10 years when Huey McGee was mayor. There was damage to the guardrails on the riverside. He had a town hall meeting. I said, you got to get that fixed. 2 years later, there's another town. I said, Huey, it's not fixed. In the meantime, a busload of kids almost went in the river. They got stuck on a route going down the hill. So everybody says, well, how come it's a straight piece of highway? How the hell are you going over there in the first place? Well, they come around the corner too fast. The new cars, they swerve like hell. They go straight across. I almost got killed because your staff do not cut the brush. If you look at this picture, there's no brush anywhere. Today, if you're in the turning lane for the theater, which sees thousands of people turning in, because we get 50,000 people a year, you can't see that corner for the brush. So that's fine if a car's doing 30 miles an hour, but yesterday one went through at 60. So the corner's safe. There should be an entrance there. Allow the entrance. If you're not going to allow the entrance and cut the guardrail, which should never have been there in the first place, give me the $45,000 and I'll call it even. Because this is ridiculous. It calls into question the value of a severance. You give me a severance today, 10 years from now, a new council and a new bunch of bureaucrats decide to change it all. So what's the value of the severance? I suggest you go up and look at the corner yourself. It's a perfectly safe corner. Our driveway gets tens of thousands of cars in and out every year. I don't know of any car accident that occurred because of somebody turning in and turning out. But given the way people drive through town, those lovely speed limit signs you got are great, but maybe you need some cameras to slow people down. Because yesterday, I swear, one guy went through at 60 miles an hour. So the problem here has been created by your bureaucrats and this council. You're the people who direct the bureaucrats. You're my representative. You need to fix this mess. This should never have happened in the first place. If I get a severance or a zoning change, all the neighbors around me are told what's happening. I didn't hear anything about this until we went to sell the lot, and that went in the ditch. There was no information given to me that you were going to do all this. And imagine my surprise after bitching for 10 years about getting that guardrail fixed on the riverside. I go out one morning and they're building this massive metal column along the highway there, where for 120 years there never was a guardrail. So that's it.
Okay.
What more can I say?
Just stay there. Maybe there are some questions for you. Councillor Warren.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just want to let Mr. Stata know that I will be extracting this at the next council meeting so we can have a more fulsome discussion.
Can I get a motion to receive the deputation?
Yes,
Councillor Ashmore,
I'll do that too.
Councillor Warren. Any other questions for Mr. Stata? Seeing none, thank you for coming
I
today.
think the document I gave you outlines all the costs to put in that, what your staff wants. So thank you for the time to talk to you. Hopefully this can be resolved.
Thank you. All in favor? And that's passed. Our next deputation is a request to purchase unopened road allowance adjacent to Part Lot 32, Concession 9 Fenland. Mr. James Webster.
Thank you for your time. To the extent that you've been able to look at the material that's submitted, you will see that I have some property at Rosedale, and the north side of it is the unopened road allowance between Fenland Township and Somerville Township. I inquired of land management to see about closing a portion of it because it would potentially assist in some proposed severances on my land on the south side of Fenland Township, or south side of the road allowance. I made application to Land Division in early May. I don't think they've processed the application yet. But anyway, the response from land management was that unfortunately the team members could not approve your request as the road allowance is unbroken and may be used for future connectivity. I've sent you material that shows there's extensive wetlands both west and east of the small area that I'm interested in. So it's my submission that there's no practical reason that anyone would ever have occasion to open the road allowance. And I don't know whether land management at the time considered that. I pointed it out to them in my correspondence. I asked for an opportunity to meet with land management. That was denied. So I don't know what they thought or what they discussed or how they came up with that answer, but it makes absolutely no sense. So I'm asking that Council direct land management to give it further consideration. It's not urgent on my part. If land management wanted to go out or have one of their representative or representatives meet on site with me in springtime and note the lay of the land, then I'd be happy to do so, but it doesn't make sense as is. So those are my brief comments. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to receive the deputation? Councillor Perry, Councillor Smeaton. Any questions? Councillor Perry.
Just very briefly, I want to thank Mr. Webster for coming in and speaking to us on this matter today. And just a very quick question. Mr. Webster and I have talked about this issue previously. Just curious that is part of your argument on the merits, shall we say, is that the future opening of this road allowance is far too speculative, given it would likely never happen, given the wetlands upon which it proceeds?
That's right. Say there's extensive the piece I'm interested in is at the top of a hill, and it slopes down both west and east into extensive wetlands. I don't know whether I sent in a colored aerial picture of the area, whether any of you have seen it or not, or looked at it, but it's there if you want to look at it, and I've been familiar with the area for 40 years. I've owned the land there, and leaving aside the merits of the proposed multiple severances, it's not absolutely necessary that I obtain the portion of the road allowance for the severances, but it's not going to ever be a road, and it would improve the potential building lots. Yeah.
Thank you.
Was able to work something out with land management.
Thanks for the clarification.
Any other questions for Mr. Webster? Seeing none, thank you for coming today. It will go to the council meeting at the end of the month, and I'm sure Councillor Perry will extract it at that point for further discussion.
I'm assuming the council meeting is all your same people we have here today, so you all have the information. I don't have to come back and repeat it at the end of the month. Thank you.
Thank you. All in favor? And that's passed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next deputation, 2024 tax increase and the allocation of fines collected by Provincial Offences Administration, Mr. William Denby. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to wish everybody Happy New Year, because there's a lot of people that didn't have one. I'm going to deal with, and I thought you would have the numbers for that, because we requested it at the meeting down at Councillor Ashmore's public meeting, as how much money does the provincial offenses up at the courthouse make the city a year. So that's a question that I'll leave for you, and hopefully we'll get that answer at the next council meeting. I'm more concerned about what was done in the budget. You swore that there would be warming rooms available for the homeless people in the city of Kawartha Lakes. Do you know that there's over 350, at least that I've met with, homeless people living in cars, sleeping in tents, anywhere that they can put their heads down? And during this frigid weekend that we just endured, there was no warming place for them after 6 p.m., even earlier than that. There was no housing for where they could go to get in and get warm. We took in 14 that would have likely froze to death and made room for them. Place called home was full, over its capacity, after we spent, I don't know how many millions of dollars to build that new building. There was people turned away that had no place to sleep, no place to go. And they stood wherever they could get warm out of the wind and endured the 2 days. To me, that's disgraceful. As council sits here and spends the kind of money that you have on frivolous things, millions of dollars, and yet we have homeless people in our own community that could freeze to death over this winter that's left. I want to know, and I want to hear at the next council meeting, what you're prepared to do. And where are these people? Because the only place there's any, should we say, place in the whole city of Kawartha Lakes is at a place called home. There is nothing in rural Kawartha for these people to go in, get a place to get warm, food, hot drink. We have no services set up that will go around to where these people and monitor them, give them blankets, give them tents, provide them whatever shelter that we can give them. Everybody turns a blind eye to them, thinks it doesn't exist here in the city of Kawartha Lakes. We're doing things right. Well, I'm sorry, you're doing things wrong. So what I did was, and I'll present it to you, I printed off a whole lot of stats across the province that the bureaucrats and our elected officials take out of the taxes. It's trillions of dollars. You talk about a housing problem? We have our best, so you think, our developer, Mr. Flatto, wanting to be kicked out of. He made Newsmaker of the Year in Markham for his corruption, not honoring all the promises that he made to the people of Markham in order to build there. So are you going to allow the same thing to go on here? Because we have Tribute Homes that have destroyed the roads hauling the fill off of
How
that
is
site.
this relevant to the budget of
It is completely
2024?
irrelevant because within the budget, you never put any money in there for them to pay compensation. You have no money in there for that. I asked you again, you're going to have, we got number 7, you're going to have number 8 lawsuit coming at you from the homeless people for the millions of dollars that they're having to endure. Are you going to do something, this council, the staff, in housing, to make sure that they don't spend one more night in minus 20-degree weather outside? Thank you.
Stay there in case there are any questions. Are there any questions for Mr. Denby? Seeing none, can I have a motion to receive the deputation? Councillor Warren, Councillor Joyce, last chance, all in favor? And that's passed. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
I'll remind the gallery that if you're going to take pictures, please stay seated because it's a distraction to everyone else when you stand up and you also block their vision. Next deputation is from Mr. Doug Shaw regarding 2024 water and wastewater rates. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, members of the public. Thank you for being able to speak here today. I've spoken many times on water and wastewater and the rates. I hear all the time, being a member of the Kawartha Lakes Taxpayers Association, people come to see me and talk to me. I go into the food stores, I go around on my nature, and people are wondering, when they talk to their neighbors, they talk to their friends, they talk to the other peoples within the communities, there's all different rates within the city. There's different rates for water. Some people, their water rates have doubled. And I demand an answer for this because it's not constitutional. It's not within the Charter of Rights. The Charter of Rights states that everybody is treated equal. In this community, it is not treated equal. I'm going to bring this subject up again, and I demand an answer. Okay, we've been ignored. I'm the president of the Coalition of Citizens Against Unlawful Water Billing. It's unlawful to do what you're doing. It will go to court. And I can remember a time when you said, Mr. Elmsley, go ahead and sue me. That may just happen. But I don't know what. The landfall of people that will sue you won't just be me. I demand answers. We have been ignored. This has been since 2018. I have areas where provincially funded infrastructure was put in. It's illegal within the Municipal Act to bill for such a service, especially when the service is known that it's only big enough for the water fire protection for provincial infrastructure, being the provincial jail. I'm only one person. There's 138 households and businesses. They're being charged for an illegal thing. Not getting the services that they're supposedly paying for. On top of that, the really unfortunate part of it is that your structure is that you attack their mortgages, you attack with the bailiff, okay, which is really unfortunate because it's extortion. It's a form of extortion. You cannot attack people that direction. It's very unfair, number one, and it's illegal. Now, I'm asking this council to reconsider. I'm giving one more chance. I've heard from nobody other than Mr. Ron Ashmore. I know what his situation is. I know how he respects the people and respects the people's wishes that they do not want to be billed for something that they don't get. I'm waiting for the rest of the councillors to come up with their whatever way they said, because you know what? This will go to court. And I'll hold every one of you responsible for your decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. If you remain there for a minute to see if we have any questions, I get a motion to receive the deputation. Councillor Smeaton, Councillor Joyce. Questions? Councillor Ashmore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Shaw. A couple of years ago, it was yourself and I think Reverend Grassi came to council, and we had come to an agreement that staff would get back to you, or there would be some sort of a solution, some sort of a game plan put in place to resolve this issue. I know it's a trans ward issue. Like, it's in Lindsay, it's in Omemee, it's in Oakwood. Like you said, there's close to 140 properties that are paying for water that they're not using. But anyways, just my question is, have you heard back from staff at all? Have you had any anything from them reaching out to you or reaching out to your group to work on some sort of a resolution to the matter?
We did get one thing back from council, and this was during COVID. We found out that our elected or our person that we had as a legal representative got absolutely no representation back. And then he got kind of sick and tired of it and said, well, you know, he said, I kind of went to school with Robin Carlson, so maybe I should drop this. Okay, we paid $4,000 for those legal fees. That'll all be accounted for in court. Okay, but you know what? It comes down to the facts. This is not Russia. This is Canada. And first of all, number one, you know, I'm appalled that at the front of a council meeting that we don't sing "O Canada." Because you know what? I'm a proud Canadian. I'm a proud farmer. Okay, and you know what? We need support in our Canadian history and in Canadian future. Canada matters. It matters around the world. Thank you.
Thank you. We do sing "O Canada" before every council meeting.
should be-
not committee of the whole.
It should be every council meeting, committee of whole, the whole bit. Okay, because you know what? It's what the people want, not what you want.
Thank you. All in favor? And that's passed. Our next deputation is Mr. Harry Lukey talking about the installation of rebar at the soccer fields at Wilson Fields. Mr. Lukey, you have 5 minutes.
It's Luchies, L-U-C-H-I-E-S, Luchies. Thank you.
Sorry, I thought I pronounced it correct.
That's okay. You don't do your job. Anyway, gentlemen, I'm just here today. I'm a good citizen. I volunteer. I've been on other council committees and such, and I'm retired. And I was enjoying myself. And I went for a walk one day at a Wilson's Field. And I came along a piece of rebar, but that long, 6 inches long, sticking out of the soccer field. I'm going back a couple of years in Toronto where this psycho planted a bunch of razor blades in the kids' playground. This is a kids' playground, guys. This is a Wilson's Field, and this is the Optimist Club. And you planted 28 rebar in those soccer fields. So I get home, and I thought, well, I'm going to phone the people from the parks, Mr. Bichard. I couldn't get through to him. So I got a secretary. She gave me a code, or whatever you want to call it, case number. And I thought, you know what? This is going to go on and on and on. So this is my trip back to you with my rebar. So I phoned Charlie McDonald up. He answers the phone right away. Thank you very much. He called Bichard. Bichard calls me, and he wants me to help him figure out how to fix these rebar. We'll put a tennis ball over them.
Could you please refer to a staff member and not by actual name?
Is that a bylaw?
No, it's not a bylaw.
What is that?
It is a request because
What's his title?
You can use his title.
What
I
is
think
it?
he is a supervisor.
I can't get a hold of him. So what's his title?
Supervisor of Parks and Rec. I
Supervisor of Parks and Recs, guys. Anyway, so he calls me, he wants to split a tennis ball, put a tennis ball over top of the rebar. He wants to use a pool noodle. And he's asking me, a citizen, what I should do. And I said, take him out of the ground. He said, well, it's going to take us a little while to resource it. So my thought was, those are going to be in there for a while. So I phoned Jen Johnson. I waited 2 weeks.
You phoned the manager of Parks and Rec.
Manager of Parks and Recs, I'm sorry. Jesus Christ. Reclaim my time, and no phone call. So 2 weeks I'm waiting. I'm not able to get out there anymore, so I don't know if those rebars are fixed or not. So I call up Mr. Ron Taylor. I think that's him right there.
The CAO.
CAO. I still haven't got a call back from him either. It's been a month and a half. It's been a month and a half for, what's her name? Jen Johnson. I'm nervous. My memory's not good. So then I phone Charlie. Charlie gets on the phone right away. Gets me a meeting with the mayor. And this is where things get really bad. I get a meeting. I go out Sunday. The rebar's buried. Now I want to know the before and after. Who thought of it? Who put them in? And who thought of burying them? So I go to the mayor. Mayor's upset. Well, it's already been taken care of. He didn't want me to record in the meeting. Okay, so I have it on recording that he didn't want it because he didn't want his words to be misconstrued. You know what he said to me? I said, Mayor, I said, there's a high expectation somebody's going to get hurt. And I looked at the mayor and he sort of, like, and I said, what? What's up? He said, that's a very low chance. It's a very low chance a kid's going to get hurt in a park. Right? So I leave him. I go to the offices here, the clerk, I don't know who they are. The place is closed. 3 hours. Lack of staff. But it's wide open, so if I come in from out of town, I have to wait. That's what your photographer guy said, records guy. Yeah, you have to wait 3 hours. No big deal, right? So anyway, so I want to find out who gave him the permission for this rebar idea. Who's the guy that put him in the ground? I couldn't find that out either. There's no records out there. They put him in the middle of November. That's all they could say. They didn't have a date. And they fixed him at the end of November, but they didn't have a date. If I'm putting a rebar in the ground, I'm going to step back. Geez, that looks funny. That looks terrible. Why should I be doing that? Are they scared? Are they scared to go back to the manager and say, you know what, this isn't a good idea? No, he wouldn't do that. He'd probably get in trouble, right? So he goes, so I have no names, nobody's going to give me any records, right? And you know what's out there now? A whole bunch of little flags in all of the water dispensers. I know, that's about 70 of them, on wire, on pieces of wire stuck in the ground. The rebar is in the ground, but you still got all kinds of damage out there. But you're going to get damage from it. And why aren't people calling? Ron, or CEO, these are your people. Are they not doing their job? Should that guy be fired? I'm asking you. You're not allowed to talk?
We don't comment on personnel issues.
Oh, jeez. Well, I'm going to come back more often because I got to practice. Obviously, I'm way out of tune. But I'm not going to go back to retiring. I'm going to find out why Ann didn't call me. I'm going to find out why you didn't call me. You know what the mayor said? It was more important that you looked after the budget than a kid getting hurt.
I did not say that.
You did so say that.
I did not say that.
You said he was too busy to call. What's too busy to call about a situation where somebody's going to get hurt?
Is your deputation completed?
Is my time up?
Because I interrupted you, I was giving you extra time.
Fine, I'll take the extra time. So meanwhile, I go to St. David Street to get the names of the guy that put those things in the ground for people. Friday, they said I couldn't be there. I said, well, I'm not out here, it's public. I went back today, they locked it. It's locked down. And the Mr. Fire Chief there, I think he better go over because there's no escape plan and there's no fire doors. And why is it locked? What are you hiding? Thank you. I'm done.
If you stay there, there might be questions. Can I get a motion to receive the deputation? Councillor McDonald, Councillor Perry.
See you at council.
Councillor Ashmore, you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Lucchese. It says on the third page of your form here that the issue has been rectified. You had two things, that this doesn't happen again, and then it says in the next point, the issue has been rectified. So you put this down in writing. So has this issue been completed to your satisfaction, but you're saying that it's rectified? Does that mean that it's 100% complete to your satisfaction, or I'm getting mixed?
Well, the only problem I'm having now is now we're getting frost. So these rebar now have been buried in the ground, and now we're going to have frost. And what does frost do? You know, I went to the building inspector. He said if that was on an industrial site, they would have shut the site down. I went to the police, and the police said you can't illegalize stupid or criminalize stupid. Thank you.
All I wanted to know if it was
Well, it is for now, but you still got those wires that are there, and you still got frost coming. And the guy's not fired, so.
All in favor? And that's passed. Thank you. Moving on, item 5 is correspondence. We have none. Item 6 is presentations. First presentation, Dr. Natalie Bocking, Medical Officer of Health, Halliburton, Kawartha Pine Ridge District Health Unit, and Dane Record. Dr. Bocking, welcome. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good afternoon, members of council and staff. Pleasure to be here this afternoon. We will try and keep on point. So I'm, as you mentioned, my name is Natalie Bocking. I'm the Medical Officer of Health and CEO for Halliburton Kawartha Pine Ridge District Health Unit, and I'm joined today. I'll let Dane present himself, introduce himself.
Members of council, residents, community, friends, and enemies. I'm Dane Record. I'm the chair of the Halliburton Kawartha Lakes Northumberland Drug Strategy and the executive director of the Peterborough AIDS Resource Network, notoriously known as PARN.
Okay, so we're here this afternoon to provide a brief update on some of the harm reduction initiatives that have been happening in the city of Kawartha Lakes. Also to provide some background information for you on a proposal that will come to council later on about locations for some safe disposal bins, and a brief update on the Halliburton Kawartha Lakes Northumberland drug strategy. So what is the issue that we're talking about? Ultimately, we're talking about an opioid overdose crisis, also known as a drug poisoning crisis. Apologies for the small numbers. This is a graph of emergency department visits for opioid overdose, presentations of opioid overdoses to the emergency department. There's 4 different colors. The lightest blue is the rate for Ontario. The dark gray bar is the rate for City of Kawartha Lakes specifically. You can see the time frame goes from 2017 on the left-hand side to 2022, so we don't have the final numbers for 2023 as of yet. But you'll notice certainly an increase since 2017, not just Ontario, but also City of Kawartha Lakes and across all of HKPR. An increase over the course of the pandemic. It has come down slightly in 2022. The numbers we're anticipating for 2023 will be about the same as 2022, so certainly still higher than pre-pandemic levels. When we think about who's impacted by this, what are the ages of individuals presenting to the emergency department with presentations of opioid overdose? So our young adults are by far overrepresented. So age 25 to 44. Next after that is younger adults, if we can call it 15 to 24. So our young demographic is impacted certainly more than other areas. This is a graph of rates of deaths associated with opioid overdoses in City of Kawartha Lakes. I know rates are a bit hard to interpret because they allow us to compare between populations, but they're not absolute numbers. So when we think about absolute numbers, in the City of Kawartha Lakes in 2022, there were 17 deaths associated or from opioid overdoses. In 2021, there were 20. Across all of HKPR District Health Unit, it is looking like the number of deaths associated with opioid overdoses in 2023 is about the same as 2022. So each of those numbers represents a member of our community and somebody that has been disproportionately impacted by the drug poisoning crisis currently. When we think about absolute numbers of people presenting to the emergency department in 2022, 95 visits to the emergency department among residents of City of Kawartha Lakes for opioid overdose presentations. And this is really just those that are presenting. So individuals that might have an overdose in the community, they might receive naloxone, which is a medication that can reverse an opioid overdose. Many of them don't come to the emergency department. So this is a complex issue that is caused by many different things. And with any complex issue, there's not one solution. There's multiple strategies. We historically have talked about the 4-pillar approach. We talk about the need for prevention and education. We talk about harm reduction, wellness. We talk about treatment and healing centers, and we talk about community safety or enforcement. And across all 4 of those pillars, we have many different institutions and community-based organizations that are working together. Your paramedics, your police services, your fire department, your housing, your social services programs, the health unit, and our community-based organizations such as PARN, such as John Howard Society, all working across each of these 4 pillars in ways that we can synergistically try to address and decrease these numbers. The health unit in particular is mandated through the Ontario Public Health Standards to provide harm reduction services across our area. So the majority of our work at the health unit is focused in harm reduction as well as prevention and education. So all of our early childhood programs really are focused on the upstream, trying to prevent substance use issues later in life. We also provide data and surveillance initiatives. We have on our website an opioid overdose dashboard, which provides ongoing numbers associated with the number of responses that paramedics have had, the number of calls that police have had, number of emergency department presentations to inform the community of what the trends are. So what do we mean by harm reduction? We hear lots of different understandings of harm reduction. Ultimately, it's an approach, a set of principles and practices that aim to reduce the harms associated with substance use. It does not expect people to immediately be able to stop using substances. It meets them where they're at, but it's aimed at decreasing emergency department visits, decreasing hospital loads by preventing the harms associated with substance use. So what are examples of what we mean by harm reduction? So this could mean access to supplies that are sterile, such as sterile needles, so people aren't sharing needles or syringes. Could mean access to sterile inhalation equipment, so they're not sharing equipment. The sharing equipment could mean that there's blood on it, which will pass on hepatitis C or HIV. It means ensuring that there's spots that people can dispose of their equipment so that it's not left in the community or in other places. It means providing naloxone so that if somebody is having an overdose associated with an opioid in particular, that they're able to access that medication to reverse it. And ultimately, a lot of harm reduction programming, which is what Dane will speak to, is focused on reaching people where they're at and providing peer support so that when people are able and in a position to enter treatment, when we have treatment beds available for them, we can connect them to those services. So a couple of comments about myths versus reality. And when I talk about reality, this is based on research that is done, evaluations that are done on harm reduction programming across the world. A lot of it is based out of British Columbia. Some of it is based out of Sydney, Australia. And it looks at what's the effectiveness of harm reduction programs. So what we do know is that harm reduction programs decrease the deaths from overdose. We know that they decrease the spread of bloodborne infections such as hepatitis C and HIV, and ultimately reduce healthcare costs. So healthcare costs associated with the emergency department, with in-hospital admissions. We know that harm reduction programs mean that less drug equipment is actually found by bystanders because there are connections to programs to dispose of it safely. We find that there is increased participation in treatment programs because people have a connection to treatment programs through harm reduction programs. We found that it does not lead to increased substance use. I hear that often as a concern. Well, could it lead to people using substances more? And that has not been found to be the case. And it does not lead to increased rates of robbery or theft or property crimes or other drug-related loitering that sometimes we hear as a concern associated with harm reduction programming. So I'm going to pass this over to Dane to provide some further details about the programs in City of Kawartha Lakes.
Thank you. Please continue. Welcome.
Thanks, Dr. Bocking, and thank you very much. When we're talking about this work on the ground and in the community, it's important to note that when we're talking about harm reduction, reducing risk in our communities, we need to be mindful of who is doing the work, who continues to do the work. We heard from an individual that is very mindful and bringing the alarm of what's happening with folks with lived experience and living experience. The work that we do, the information that we receive as an organization, as a collaborative with a number of organizations, it is primarily informed and led by people with lived experience, living experience, and living in the work that they do. So for the time that we've been able to connect with you all in these spaces, the locations that have been identified for a disposal bin, and it doesn't have to be such a medical yellow, there's the disposal bin. We have art programs, we have artists that are willing and wanting to contribute to the beautification of your respective communities. But identifying where disposal bins are is absolutely necessary, because it means that the supplies that are going out will go in to those bins, and Dane's not receiving phone calls by angry residents saying that they found sharps on their backyard. When we talk about the needle and syringe program, locally, we're talking about folks who, in their work and in their experience, we have 580 individuals total who access services, who are familiar with the work that we do as a collaborative strategy, as a number of organizations in CKL. These are 580 individuals. There's almost 200 that are unique, meaning it's the first time that they've connected with us. What this doesn't show and what y'all aren't gonna see are the folks that trust in those individuals to access resources for them, because they feel the stigma associated with asking for help. And help could be anything from, where do I get a new syringe, to where can I go to seek treatment. We're talking about disposal bins primarily, and this is an important slide to make note of, because over the last 4 years, 5 years, there's been a unhealthy trend in terms of the return of sharps. What this says to us on the ground, and what it's been saying for a while to the health unit, which receives funding by the province, is that folks are using less sharps, less needles when it comes to the application or receipt of their supply, their drugs. The return rate in 2023 is 28%, but what isn't captured, because not everybody's aware of this, HKPR, the health unit, the Lindsay office on Angeline, received a return rate of 138% of sharps that went out, meaning that for every one that they sent out, they were receiving more than one, because folks know where to go. Folks know where to drop off the supplies, and folks know the people doing the work who will bring it to the place that they can count on. When we talk about safe disposal and talk about identifying spaces and places, bringing back, speaking to the individuals with lived experience, living experience, to inform us on where the best places, the most suitable places to return used sharps, pipes, stems, other drug and substance use equipment. It doesn't need to be a phone call to Public Works saying, what do I do? If folks are educated and informed frequently on where to dispose their sharps, where to dispose their stems, their glass, then we're doing our part to beautify our respective communities. This is a graphic here just identifying 2 proposed locations that we're seeking for new disposal bins. And again, the bin that you're seeing, this one's a gray bin. It doesn't need to be such a basic, bland gray. If you have artists that you want to put on in the community, tell them to make it nice. But make sure that when you're doing so, you have it nice and clear that this is a Sharps disposal bin. It's not to drop off your library books. It's not to put your mail in. These are Sharps bins. Purpose of the HKLN drug strategy, just for folks unable to see the purpose, is to facilitate a collaborative evidence-based approach to minimize the risks and harms associated with substance use in the county of Haliburton, here, City of Kawartha Lakes, and Northumberland County, including Alderville First Nation. We work as a collaborative. PARN is one of a number of organizations that include, as mentioned, John Howard Society, CMHA. We receive info and evidence directly and indirectly from spaces such as place called home. We hear from the residents, and we hear from you all passively when Dane's reading the minutes and seeing that, oh, I guess we got in trouble again. I better make a visit to you all. We have these conversations with our emergency officials, our emergency services, municipal folks, and folks with lived and living experience. Without their input and without the collaborative effort, the work that we do and strive to do is done in vain. We're looking to address the urgency in the community, and it is an urgent matter. Your friends, your neighbors, your children, your caregivers, dependents are all impacted negatively, directly and indirectly. And we could all say, oh, it's that person down the street. No, it impacts everybody. Do you like your wine with your Valium? This is the harm reduction work that we do. We want to expand harm reduction and treatment practices, not just by saying, let's get more beds, let's look about a facility. If you all have empty space, the PARN will gladly take it so we can see those return rates go up. Because we also educate on every transaction that we make, as do the team at John Howard, as do the health promoters and all staff at HKPR. Eliminating structural stigma, so putting those bins out in the community, making sure that there's signage, if not clear signage, just some wayfinding, even just to say, hey, I know where you can bring that. Here's where you go. The structures that have kept people in the background, bring them forward so we can see a community that is seeing some equitable access. And investing in prevention and early intervention. It is an ongoing effort. And unfortunately, with the changes of drug supply, poison drug supply is a thing. The work that I do and the work that the health promoters do, our work is going to exist, and there's going to continue to be funding put toward harm reduction and other risk reduction efforts regarding substance use, because we're not thinking differently. Next steps. If you all have property, I'm very serious. I will gladly sign off on a lease, because the community needs a space to safely access their supplies, safely return their supplies, so we're not seeing people making the trip to one location They can go to another location right downtown and just drop everything off and receive some education, some destigmatizing information along the way. There's a needs assessment survey that's currently underway that's being guided, led, informed by people living in the experience, people with lived experience. Funding has been sought and continues to be sought by the drug strategy through the Ontario Trillium Foundation to hire a coordinator. So we're not here all the time. Much as we like it, it takes away from our respective prevention work to help you all and the residents in the gallery. And recognize that there is a drug strategy group in the city of Kawartha Lakes. Find out who they are, connect with them, get to know them. Hopefully along the way we will see healthy people, healthier communities, and healthier dialogue. Because I like the work, but I shouldn't continue to make money on death. And these are why we're here to have the dialogue with you all. Thank you, and we're here for questions.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to receive the presentation? Councillor Richardson, Councillor Perry. Questions? Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Dr. Bocking and Mr. Record for coming today. It's out there. We know it's out there. The presentation that you just made to us today really drilled home. I think sitting around this table right now and feeling the passion that you have for wanting to make that difference in the community. And as councillors, I'm putting myself out there right now, like, I would love to come on one of those meetings and have that discussion with the strategy group, putting that offer out there right now. But we certainly do appreciate what you are doing in the community. We recognize that there is a huge issue right now. And by you coming to council today, speaking to it, hopefully our media outlets pick up what you've brought to us today, and we all can keep our eyes open and help those folks that need some help. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ashmore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Dr. Bocking and Dane for coming today. Thank you for your presentation. Just a couple questions. I know that it would be nice if we didn't even have to discuss this, but we've got this issue and we would love to rid this society of these drugs, and they have such a detrimental effect on our society. And it doesn't matter what age group it is, primarily young, middle age, but my first question is, you mentioned treatment, and treatment to me and many other people is what we would like to see more of. Are we putting, I see it's makes up 25% of your pillars, the treatment part of it. Would you be foreseeing putting more attention on treatment so these people don't go down this destructive road? I just couldn't imagine like what people are going through. I've never been through it myself, but I do know people who have gone through this themselves. And treatment and prevention are the two key things. Are you putting more emphasis on that right now, please?
Thank you, Councillor Ashmore, through you, Mr. Mayor. So our respective organizations are primarily in the two other pillars and are not primarily in the treatment pillar, but I know that within our health care system, our acute care system, we're seeing the province place more emphasis on treatment. We're seeing kind of some additional beds in Peterborough area. I have not heard of additional funding through any of HKPR jurisdiction, but certainly I think there's an acknowledged need for more treatment availability.
Okay, thanks. And as far as the boxes themselves, like how would the security be there? Because, you know, these boxes could be potentially, hopefully not broken into, but not so much of the security and the location. Okay, the location, are they near any parks or any areas? I just saw quickly, I couldn't see exactly where they were located. I think these two locations were in Lindsay. What are you proposing other locations throughout the city?
So I think Dane's probably better to speak to that. The two ones on the map there, you're right, we're in Lindsay. There is already an existing unit at the health unit office in Lindsay. And as I understand it, there is a unit in Fenland Falls at not on municipal property that has been in the works. So I'll let Dane speak to some of the background community work that's been done to decide what locations fit kind of the need here.
Thank you, Dr. Bocking, the Councillor through you, Chair. The disposal bins are all locked and all secured. Staff from PARN and other organizations, I can only speak for PARN, we are all trained in the management, maintenance, disposal, and security of all disposal bins at any site that we work with or alongside. When there are concerns of a security breach, so it may be someone throwing in a library book and realizing that the library is over there. We're the ones that report to that inquiry, and we're the ones that have the keys and the facilities to safely open, access, and lock. If there is a maintenance issue, we report within 24 hours.
Thank you.
Councillor Smeaton.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you. Nice to meet you, Dane. We've met, obviously. This is a big part of every week, right? So, as you know. So I'll reserve comments for council 2 weeks from now. What would help me the most is, can we get this presentation sent? So that conversations that happen every week anyway, some of the people are even here in the galleries, it turns out, on an ongoing basis. This would be nice for me to have. It'd also be great, I hate to rush it, but if it could be this week. Roma, quite a few of us are going to Roma, the Rural Ontario Municipalities Association conference, and this is going to be a hot conversation topic amongst a lot of councillors. Last year, homelessness and this and it's only escalated, obviously, throughout the province. So this would just be good to have memorized, digested, and that if that could be sent, and then I'll have more to say in 2 weeks for sure. But I just want to process this a bit and contact some people, and like you said, who are living this. So
Presentation will be attached to the minutes, which are coming out this week.
Oh, perfect. Okay, thank you.
Just a question on, and I don't know, you're obviously in the prevention and education business. One of the issues, I believe, is for safe sites. A lot of the sites and a lot of the drugs are now done through inhalation. And of course, most buildings, if not all buildings, are now smoke-free. So it creates a problem of the safe sites. Is there any update on that? Has anybody come up with a really clever solution?
Not sure that anyone's come up with a really clever solution, but so I think what you're speaking to specifically are consumption and treatment service sites. So these are sites that are either funded by the province or another source that provide a place that people can go and use substances on site, have access to materials while they're there, and for it to be supervised. So if there's an overdose at the time, people respond right away. The closest site to here is in Peterborough. Otherwise, closest sites, I think, are Toronto then. So we don't have a site across HKPR. You would have seen in the media this week, Peterborough Public Health really reporting record numbers of opioid overdose deaths in 2023. And so some people say, well, does that mean the site's not working? Well, over 80% of deaths are now related to inhalation. So they're not related to injection drugs or snorting drugs. And you cannot smoke drugs at any of the consumption and treatment service sites that are official in the province. So that's a huge challenge, a huge dilemma. I know that there has been advocacy with the Ministry of Health to determine what would need to change to allow it to legally happen at consumption and treatment service sites. It does require, some specific controls to ensure that occupational health and safety, so for the folks that are working there, the other clients that are going, that there is it's contained, you have the appropriate HVAC systems, et cetera. So, we're hopeful, but we have not heard anything imminently changing.
Thank you. Councillor Warren, did you have a question?
I do, and thank you for the presentation. It's very interesting. I'm wondering if the province or the federal government are looking at safe supply of drugs. I mean, that's the next step. People are dying in droves from inhaling opioids, fentanyl and such. So that's my question. I know Portugal has done that, and the rate of drug use has diminished.
So I can take a first attempt at answering this. So I mean, the answer is yes. Both the federal government and provincial government have been looking at this. There's certainly other provincial jurisdictions that are farther ahead in this than Ontario is. We have seen some pilots taking place. There's some interesting evaluations that have recently come out looking at the effectiveness of safe supply programs in decreasing overdose deaths, and some promising data coming out of British Columbia. The biggest challenge facing these programs has been concerns about diversion, or people taking what they're getting through the safe supply program and then selling it. It's a very small proportion, but we know, that's why we do evaluations, to identify any concerns so that you can then adjust the programs to be able to minimize anything associated with that. I'm not aware of anything across HKPR currently that is really exploring safe supply. I think there is a site in Peterborough that has explored it. Otherwise, again, a lot of these initiatives are focused in the larger urban centers, and really, I think for us, it's looking at how we can adapt them to more rural areas to meet our needs.
Thank you. Thank you for coming today, both of you, and for your presentation. We have a motion on the floor. All in favor? And that's passed. Thanks again. I think we'll take 10 minutes, and we'll come back at 20 to 3. Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order. Next item on the agenda is Claire Bazinski from SEMA, and she'll give an update on the Active Transportation Master Plan. And it will be on Zoom.
Thank you very much for accommodating. I really appreciate your time today. I'm going to hold my breath and share my screen so that you can see a copy of the presentation I'm providing. Before I jump into the presentation, I wanted to extend my heartfelt thank you for your understanding. I was not able to come back in November to present this update on the Active Transportation Master Plan. I was going through some personal matters, and I just really appreciate staff and the task force being so accommodating and supportive during this time. It was a really important time for me to be with my family, but this is also very important and near and dear to my heart too. So I'm glad to be here now, but I truly appreciate the understanding that was provided by city staff and the task force. And I'm just happy to be here now to provide you with this update. It truly is an update, and it is here provided to you for information. We are nearing the end of the development of the Active Transportation Master Plan. We are getting close. So we wanted to use a similar model as we used for the Trails Master Plan update and provide you with information on what you can anticipate to see within the Active Transportation Master Plan, including the core recommendations and foundations that the plan will be developed around. So we're sharing some of the highlights of what we've been able to achieve over the past couple of months, the past couple of years, and what will go forward in terms of the content for the Active Transportation Master Plan document for the City of Kawartha Lakes. I won't get into the objectives too much because I believe you've heard them discussed before, but we have worked collectively, collaboratively to ensure that we are developing a robust and thoughtful and comprehensive strategic functional master plan for the City of Kawartha Lakes that looks at responding to the conditions now, but also what the city wants to be in the future as it relates to healthy, sustainable, active forms of transportation and the way that integrates into the overall policy structure, planning supports, and overall design and construction and maintenance of your infrastructure. So we're really committed to the foundations of this plan in order to achieve some of the wider objectives that the city has put forward and some of the bigger priorities of yourselves as council, but your community members, your stakeholders. And we truly believe that by supporting, hopefully, ultimately, but also really strategizing and moving forward with a plan like this, that you're putting forward the steps that need to be taken in order to invest in safe, comfortable, sustainable infrastructure that holistically thinks about a shift in the way that we plan for and design and maintain around those who are the most vulnerable within our community from a transportation perspective. If we look at investing in the initiatives and the recommendations that you'll see in this presentation, we're really striving towards greater mobility, greater accessibility, greater choice, greater safety, and improved access within the communities, greater resiliency and sustainable alternatives. And all of those tie into much greater priorities that I spoke of earlier around social benefit, environmental benefit, and economic benefit. So we feel it's very critical to always tie that back to the wider objectives because, of course, as you'll see in the presentation, which is quite comprehensive and is being left with you for consideration, of course, that it is quite an ambitious plan. It is quite a costly at times plan, but we really do think that the costs are very much outweighed by the benefits that could be realized at the end of the day. Our entire process has been informed by as much and as robust engagement as we can based around our very educated and helpful and informed task force, who's just been such a great foundation and pillar to the development of this plan, but also where we can, reaching out to key stakeholders through workshops and one-on-one discussions, members of the public, other interest groups where we can. We have really tried to be as thoughtful and intentional with the way in which we've responded and the way in which we've incorporated the input. And we feel very strongly that that is directly reflected in what you see in terms of the recommendations that are coming forward that will ultimately be part of the Active Transportation Master Plan. Any master plan is based around that ultimate goal and that ultimate vision, the grand aspiration that we're working towards. And again, I won't read what's on this slide, but we always go back not only to the input that we've received, but to the confirmed vision statement and the series of supportive objectives that we collectively created as the foundation and the base of this master plan. We also identified 5 core ambitious goals that, again, provide us with some great direction on what it is we want to achieve and what it is we want to see realized through ultimately the planning, design, and implementation of this plan. You see great words used in these statements like equity and accessibility and feasibility. We try to balance and marry the grand aspirations with also day-to-day function and implementation and feasibility as much as possible, and really strive to be able to not only think about future changes and evolution, but also what it looks like to integrate active transportation into day-to-day practice, whether or not that's through planning, design, engineering, construction, maintenance, or any other municipal actions going forward. The plan itself is being developed around 6 core components. That is what's driving the actual content in addition to the recommendations that they're being developed around. We have recommendations and content around the actual active transportation network itself. So what we are recommending in terms of routes and facilities, the timing for implementation at a master plan level, so the phasing of those routes and those facilities. We've identified a series of priority projects that we feel very strongly are the spine of the success of this system. We're very proud of this because, yes, it's a very ambitious network, but we think that these are really very critical and important projects that will lead to great successes for the city. We then get into some of the more nitty-gritty implementation details around costing, around funding, around the core recommendations to influence process and practice, and also considerations around education and awareness. So these are all really great components of a master plan that are based on best and comparable practice that we are continually trying to create and evolve in the context of the city of Kawartha Lakes that's tailored to what you need in terms of creating success and ongoing implementation moving forward. I'll get into some of the details of each of these components at a high level. Again, information for you to take away. But as we develop the active transportation network, so those facilities and those routes throughout all areas of the city of Kawartha Lakes, we worked with the task force and through an iterative process that my team and I use to develop networks where we identified a series of routes that could form part of the system. We evaluated those routes. We determined what was feasible, what was possible relative to the safe and comfortable need for pedestrians and cyclists. And we're very proud to say that we have identified over 750 kilometers of possible projects that we think could be relatively feasible and quite successful within the city of Kawartha Lakes. There are a range of projects, not only within the built-up areas and the communities, but also within the rural areas. The real commitment we see here is to provide opportunities for a range of different types of active transportation users, whether you're somebody who wants to go for a 500 meter to a kilometer walk just to get to the library or to a park, or if you're somebody who likes to throw on some spandex and go for a 50 to 100 kilometer ride within the rural areas. This is about adaptability, option, and different alternatives. And you very much see that in the network, and you very much see that in the connectivity and continuity within the system that we've identified. Those are the routes and the connectivity of the routes, but as we mentioned a little bit earlier, each of those routes has a type of facility that we are suggesting be considered for possible implementation. We've worked through a very rigorous process that's based on guidelines and standards to identify what is considered appropriate and taken into consideration what would be considered to be most appropriate from a safety and comfort perspective of the users as well. And so you see quite a wide range of different types of facilities that are separated and provide a very specific and designated space for pedestrians and cyclists, but also integrated and mixed use spaces where needed, where you can feasibly and safely use active transportation modes along with other vehicles on the roadway. Once again, I really emphasize the fact that these are based on what the conditions are of the roadways and what's considered appropriate. And we feel very strongly that based on the guidelines and standards that are out there, that what we have identified is not only considered feasible, but also really hits on providing that safe and comfortable space for the most vulnerable users of our transportation system. Continuing along, it isn't just about providing cycling opportunities or providing a bike lane. It is also about trying to think holistically too around how the space is used by different transportation users, prioritizing the most vulnerable. We know that there's an ongoing transportation master plan that the city's undertaking. We are continually trying to coordinate as much as we can. We think that there are great opportunities to leverage and build upon that great work there. And we think that there's amazing opportunities to think about traffic calming, to think about walkability enhancements, sidewalks, and other types of improvements that generally influence and change the way in which people move within different city corridors and roadways to prioritize those that are the most vulnerable and to create those safe and comfortable systems as much as possible. These are our maps, and I sometimes hate to put them in a presentation because it's hard to see. We have provided them, if we can, in large scale, but it really does, in the next couple of slides, give you a good snapshot of the overall connectivity and the density of the system. There are a number of different routes that we have identified within the communities and the surrounding areas. This provides a very ambitious look at what could be possible while realizing that it might not all be feasible within the entire 20-year timeline. And in fact, it probably won't be, but it does reflect great amounts of input and consideration around need from different stakeholders in the public, around what could be possible based on guidelines and standards, and around the major destinations and the drivers around how people move within the community as much as we can. Once we had the network identified and the facilities reviewed and suggested, we went on to when does this possibly happen? This is at the master plan level, as you well know. So we provide a phasing overview in different horizons to provide some direction on when certain projects could happen at certain times. And we use a process of reviewing what projects are currently being recommended through capital budgets, what EA's environmental assessments, are being undertaken, other projects are being undertaken, what are considered priorities from a public and stakeholder input perspective, and what has already been approved. And we will look at that relative to what could be possible. And so we have identified 3 horizons, short term being the first 10 years, medium term, the second 10 years, and long term 20 years plus. This is not prescriptive. This is not meant to be a you shall do this now and in this stage. This is very much a suggested direction on what could be possible for consideration to be integrated as part of your annual budget and review process, and part of the considerations of how this holistically fits into wider infrastructure and servicing planning relative to your growth and your future evolution as a municipality. So we provide some direction as much as possible, but we understand that this is something that needs a lot of collaboration and ongoing coordination. What does that look like? You can see the build out through these maps and the evolution of what the infrastructure implementation could look like. We are being ambitious by identifying what is the lowest hanging fruit, the least amount of financial impact in the short term, and building on those, but we're also identifying which projects that we think would be the most impactful for the community. So we're not shying away from some of those bigger projects. We're just trying to find a balance as much as we can. I mentioned earlier that This is a big network. This is a big and ambitious system. So we have identified a series of priority projects that do represent those really impactful spine linkages that would really make a significant impact within the community and could build upon that with other projects as well. So we have just about over 400 kilometers of priority projects within the city. And we have costed all of those projects and costed all of the priorities to provide that next level of recommendation and suggestion for future consideration. I add a huge asterisk beside all of these and a huge caveat that this is master plan level costing, but we want to be transparent. We want to provide a realistic look at what this could cost. But we also know that these are not prescriptive. We don't know, and we try as best as we can to provide economies of scale to identify external funding opportunities, some cost offsetting alternatives that we can look to so that the burden isn't quite as significant on the municipality and on the different decision makers that have to make these decisions. But what we do feel is very important is that this type of plan provides the breadth of different alternatives. So can these projects be put into retrofits or other wider infrastructure projects? Absolutely. Can we leverage development charges to provide growth-related projects and to provide options for funding? Absolutely. Do we want to try to find those external funding options from the province or the federal government? We think that that is a really great opportunity too, but also some in-kind or donation supports. And we will continue to explore those and outline those within the master plan, because we want there to be as much transparency in what the impact could be, but also solutions of how to address that. So we know that as we move forward, there will be a number of different implementation next steps and needs. We know that we'll need to proceed with development approvals. We'll need to do some select environmental assessments, look at preliminary and detailed design going forward. So this is not the end of the conversation. This is a great master plan when we get it in front of you and developed that we're working towards, that creates that foundation, that understanding of what the potential could be, what the aspirations are, and how we can get there over the next 20 plus years. All of these outcomes or these outputs for the plan are packaged into a series of recommendations that provide the support on day-to-day goings on in terms of decision making around active transportation and how that works. We used a similar model for the Trails Master Plan as well. So we are working towards creating a master plan around a series of recommendations that are in the topics of guidelines, policies, implementation, programming, and monitoring. The whole spectrum of what needs to be considered or would have to be considered as you embark on implementation. This is about how you design active transportation infrastructure, how that feeds into current standards and guidelines, what the policy foundation from a land use planning perspective looks like, and how we can create land use and environments that are supportive of and also reflective to the future of active transportation. Implementation deals with processes and practices, those day-to-day goings-on, as I said before, of staff coordination, collaboration, and work that needs to happen on the city side. Programming is about education and awareness. Unless people know that this is an opportunity, know that it's something that's viable and something that's exciting and interesting to do, there won't be as much of a success as we hope to see. So we really strongly feel like programming will be a key component to this plan. And last but certainly not least, monitoring and evaluation. As we proceed with implementation, do we know that we're getting it right? Do we know where we can have lessons learned and what we can do to adapt? So we have a series of recommendations on all 5 of these topics that support how we can do those next steps and move forward with the work that needs to be done in order to achieve the ultimate goals of the Active Transportation Master Plan. We have similarly identified a series of priority recommendations out of all of those that we have identified. This was actually a suggestion from the task force as well as from a public health stakeholder that we gathered input from. And so we have identified the top recommendations that we feel strongly will have that significant impact on the processes and the functions and the supports for day-to-day active transportation integration. And so while there is an aspiration to achieve all of the network and all of the recommendations, we know and we appreciate that there's only limited capacity, limited resources at times. And so we want to be able to provide that flexibility and that those options within this plan and that focus to be able to strategize and think very thoughtfully over the course of the 20 years, but the next couple of years on how we can achieve those goals that we've set and that ultimate vision. So these two slides just summarize what those core priority recommendations are. And we think that they've been thoughtfully identified and very much reflect a range of the 5 different topics so that you are equally implementing and considering and supporting those different types of recommendations and interventions. We are, as I said, nearing the completion of the project, which I know the task force and many of those involved are very excited to work towards. So as we move forward, we are almost done developing the Active Transportation Master Plan actual report document, which will go through a series of reviews with staff and the task force and other stakeholders. And at that time, when we feel that it's ready, we will be coming back to you with the final report for your consideration. And we're very much looking forward to these next stages and ultimately, hopefully, the adoption of the plan and implementation of the great foundations that are found within it. So with that, thank you so much for the time today. Happy to answer any questions. And once again, thank you so much for accommodating my personal schedule. It was much appreciated.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to receive the presentation? Councillor Ashmore, Councillor Perry. Yeah, I'll get you, Councillor Warren, sorry. Any questions for on the presentation? Councillor Ashmore.
Thank you. Through you to Claire. Thanks for the presentation. Just a couple of questions, a couple of observations. The paved shoulders have been nothing but a win-win situation for everybody, not just the integrity of the road, but I find everybody likes them, and wherever they're constructed. And I have a Paralympian in Dunsford who uses it and is phenomenal for his training, let alone the people that use these paved shoulders. They're great. One of the other things is when you see these trails, there are trails everywhere, and some of the trails, I'll just give you an example, between Lindsay and Bobcaygeon, we do have one nice trail in Dunsford that we're working on, trying to keep it going with the help of councillors here, the Dunsford Nature Trail. But there's other trails that I find, and I'm not sure whether we might be able to do this as part of the plan. But I find, unfortunately, that people, some landowners tend to fence them off, and they basically encroach on them or take them over, and it kind of cuts access to, well, it cuts the access off for people who want to use these trails. And this is not very common, but it does happen. I'm just wondering, would we be able to look at these trails, look at these former railway lines and see who is doing this, and perhaps we could open these up? I know some of them have Bell Canada easements and the like, but there's more than that. There's the instances where they're basically closed up, and you know, they're public access points, and just wondering if you could look into that, perhaps. Thanks.
Thank you for your question through the chair, and Councillor Warren may chuckle as I start with my answer, which is that we have been pretty adamant about the difference between the Trails Master Plan and the Active Transportation Master Plan, sheerly for scope. So the Trails Master Plan update is the plan that deals with anything that is off-road, anything that is on publicly owned lands, sometimes privately owned lands, that's considered a trail for active use, and sometimes, in some cases, select motorized use. In the context of the Active Transportation Master Plan, we are solely looking at linkages within the road right-of-way or within the boulevard. So we are focusing quite specifically on what could be done along the roadway corridors as opposed to outside of it. What I do know, because we had the benefit of supporting the city in the Trails Master Plan update, is that through both of these plans, there is a strong series of recommendations that encourages the exploration of other alternatives, other opportunities when it comes to especially the off-road trail linkages. We had 11 focus areas under the Trails Master Plan, with the acknowledgement that there were many more that could be explored. So I'm a big advocate of finding opportunities within utility corridors, public-private partnership in terms of, easements or trying to find opportunities where we can use lands that would create those connections. But the response would be through this plan, we are focusing primarily on the on-road or in-boulevard connections at this time.
Thank you.
Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, and through you. Thank you for the presentation, and I'm a big fan of us moving in this direction. My question is you identified 407 kilometers of improvements in the short term, and to me, that's a hefty lift when it comes to looking at the impact on the budget and how we will afford those. So for me, that's raising a red flag right now. I just wondered if you wanted to explain that a little bit further. Thank you.
Through the chair, thank you so much. And we've had numerous conversations on how this can be appropriately presented and achieved without setting inappropriate expectations, but also trying to be as ambitious as possible. You're absolutely correct. In the short term, for the full network, we have just over 400 kilometers in the short term, which reflects about $37 million overall. That is a huge ticket price over the course of 10 years, about $3.7 million a year. That is just if we assume sheer capital project. But I'm optimistic that through this plan and through the future exploration from staff and others, that we can find a lot of great opportunities to integrate many of these projects into larger capital projects that Public Works and Engineering are already going to be undertaking to improve the transportation system, that we can use the amazing growth and the development that's happening within the city to identify growth-related projects that could be covered under development charges. We're encouraged to see that the federal government continues to provide financial supports for municipalities for infrastructure improvements. So I will be the first to say that this, and again, Councillor Warren has heard me say this many times at task force meetings, this is very ambitious, but I do think that it does set out an ambitious framework, and that $37 million in the short term would only be reduced further if there was a decision to focus solely on the priority projects as well. So not only cost-setting opportunities, but that's also one of the reasons why we identified the priority projects, because it is a shorter list than the overall network, but still achieves some of those great ambitious goals that the city has put forward.
Thank you. And no, I do appreciate that explanation as well. And it is ambitious. You're right. And I know when we're sitting and looking at development applications and we're looking at that intensification in certain areas in Lindsay, for example, where, you're going to have an apartment building, you're going to have a surge of, new drivers using that as their primary access to the rest of the town. We're going to have to look at how we influx that when it comes to the master transportation. So no, I appreciate what you're saying, and I appreciate the answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Warren.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much, Claire. That's a very good presentation. And just to let council know that there are a lot of grants out there for active transportation right now, and to be aware of that and have staff be aware of that and try to lasso some of those. Thanks again, Claire.
Thank you. Councillor Smeaton.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you, one comment, one question. The one comment would be just at the Trails Master Plan, at the Transit Master Plan public information sessions. Those also have really done a great job of showing everybody how this is not one master plan. I got to be careful. That's the last thing we want to have out there, because they're very separate, and that's the point. But this isn't silo. These groups are all, the communication is very obvious, and that's important. I had a question about leveraging DC funds when you mentioned that. It may be a question for Director Barry. It may be a question for the CAO. I'm not sure. I just wondered at what phase of the development process does that whole, how you're like cutting into the 37 million, one of the options she mentioned was, levering DC funds, for example, leveraging some DC funds, and that whole developer participation, as I learn more, I realize it's not as cut and dry as you pay this, and that's how it works. But what you're articulating is that that is in fact very much a need, that the developers are going to be responsible, and I don't see why they're not also enjoying the process. What is the earliest stage where that happens, where the articulation of the funding from developers is announced? Do we wait till till PAC for that? Is that when planning committee, is that when, or can it be earlier that a developer might commit to an allocation of funding that's directly involved with the Trails Master Plan within the development itself? Just for my learning, because I've never...
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, through you. So probably a couple of tracks. Essentially, though, the first step is getting this plan in place so that it becomes that informing piece, so that you can embed it in your policies and then have the ability to request them as conditions of development, for example, or to embed them in your development charges as actual growth-related projects that this council and future councils are committed to. So this is really the fundamental first step. Once it's adopted, it then gets embedded into those policies like our official plan and like the master transportation plan. Those are the critical steps that you need to do to even make requests or sort of informed request. So you've seen the timelines. Essentially, that important work will happen over this year. It will then inform those other various documents. We'll be updating, for example, our development charges over the following year. And so if these are projects, for example, that are committed by council, sort of through those plans and policies, then they would be reflective and there would be funding mechanisms. At the same time, it's also a good opportunity for staff to be able to show and use these policies, again, coming back through Planning Advisory Committee and some of those developments specifically. So a number of tracks there. I think you're going to find that certainly over next year, it's going to inform a number of important policy documents that you're going to be approving.
So, all in favor? And that's passed. Thank you, Claire, for coming today and for the presentation. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you. Moving on, CAO Ron Taylor and Ms. Brenda Stonehouse, Manager of Strategy and Innovation, are going to bring us up to date on the strategic plan.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you, thanks for the introduction, and certainly very excited to bring this update to your strategic plan to you today. We committed to an early 2024 timeframe to do so. Our current plan, which is really not so much after this month, but essentially had a 4-year timeframe, which outlined and spelled out your strategic priorities, etc. So it's timely in that we want to now refresh and update this particular document. I am joined by our Manager of Strategy and Innovation, and Brenda and I are going to walk you through some of the findings, the process to get to where we are today, and certainly touching on some of the next steps. If we go to, I think you're in control, so we'll go to the next slide very briefly. I should flag that the draft document is in your folders today. It was also included in the agenda that was published last week, so that if the public is following along through the agenda, that draft document is there and available. One of the things that this document in my mind is just extremely important. It's your document as council, but it's our document as the community. And we really took an approach here where we wanted to build from the past. So there have been a number of past iterations of strategic plans. They've grown and expanded, and certainly we wanted to build on those successes and what was built collaboratively through past councils and through community outreach. This document, it's small and mighty. It's not hundreds of pages. And that is its complexity in my mind. And it really is a complex process to try to capture what are the community's long-term aspirations. Where do you want to go? How do you want to build your community over a very long period of time? And then at the same time, capture sort of in a more immediate term, how can we advance it? How can we capture the priorities of the day? And I'll say in this term of council. So you're seeing a plan that is 4 years in time frames, but at the same time, it's capturing, I'll say, decades of previous work and certainly decades beyond our time in terms of overall community building. So we'll go to the next slide. I don't probably need to remind you as council, we've gone through about a 6-month process for this refresh and update to the plan. We started mid to later last year, and we had a number of working sessions that we worked through with various audiences. We also reached out more generally through our Jump In platform, provided different iterations of priorities and actions that we could accomplish over the next 4 years. And so again, essentially we're now at that point where we want to present to you what we've heard, what are the findings, what's recommended for the next 4 years for priorities to advance. And so after today's meeting, we're hopeful that the next step is in 2 weeks, this document will come to council more formally, it will be approved. But really, that's not the end of the process. That's really the refresh phase I was talking about. Really, the rubber hits the road after January, where we now need to action and implement these various priorities over this term of council and beyond. So we'll go to the next slide. I did mention that, like the past iteration, we really wanted to get good feedback, consultation. So not only did we focus on sessions with you as council, or with our staff, or with certain community groups, but we also wanted to reach out generally to the public, test what we had currently and where we were heading and what was top of mind and what was priority to all of those respective groups. We also took the opportunity to test some of the structure and the elements of the plan as well. So does our vision resonate? Does our mission as a municipality resonate as a focus? Our values, our guiding principles. So all of these things were tested throughout these various sessions and outreach over the last 6 months. So I'm going to turn it over to Brenda, and she's going to walk you through what we heard and how you see the plan as it is presented to you today. And then we'll conclude on some next steps and certainly answer any questions that you may have. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it over to Brenda. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Strategic Planning Facilitation Team, who you've worked with in the workshops. So that's Steve Babcock, the Manager of Customer Services, Christine Briggs, our IDEA People Partner, Ryan Cowison, Internal Communications Specialist, and Mike Norman, who is the Executive Manager, Continuous Improvement and Strategic Initiatives for the London District Catholic School Board. So we did do a lot of consultation. We had workshops and surveys, and I'm going to take you through what we heard out of that. So as Ron said, what we heard was we just needed to refresh the plan. We didn't need to start from scratch with a whole new plan. So the vision, mission, values, and guiding principles still resonate, both with our staff and the community. The 4 priority areas are still quite relevant, and we heard consistent themes throughout all the workshops and the survey. Those themes include affordable housing is very much needed. People are looking for sustainable and environmentally conscious development. There was a lot of people asking for improved healthcare, education, and services that are needed as we grow. Amenities such as outdoor spaces, community events, and recreational facilities are also desired. And transportation came up over and over again in all its forms. So we just heard about active transportation in the Transportation Master Plan, but also transit, connections to GO Transit, our road network. And all of these will be needed to support growth and business. And the other major theme that we heard was that people are really concerned about preserving our small town culture and heritage. So our vision is thriving and growing communities within a healthy and natural environment. The vision is our idea of what we'd like in the future. It's that goal that we're reaching towards. In the survey, we asked people to share with us their vision, and I'd like to share some of those comments with you. The majority of vision statements we received from the public did align with our vision statement. So a welcoming, diverse, and thriving community, opportunity to enjoy nature, parks, trails, and waterways. A safe, welcoming community with growth and a proactive vision for that growth. A community that supports its population with access to services and inclusion. A city of healthy, thriving, and diverse communities that encourage innovation and creativity, supporting social, cultural, and economic opportunities for people of all ages. And a growing community that protects and embraces our natural environment, forests, lakes, trails, farms, etc. So as you can see, a lot of what we heard from the public aligns really well with our vision. Now to talk about our mission. The mission statement outlines our purpose and what we do, basically. So working together to deliver the highest standard of municipal service and uphold our commitment towards a sustainable future. This has changed slightly from the 2020 to 2023 plan. We've tried to make it a little clearer. And then we have our values, and the values are the things that we believe in and the behaviors that we expect to see every day in our staff and council, and that they are accountability, respect, and teamwork. These are the same as the 2020 to 2023 plan. So as Ron mentioned, this is a community plan, and we can't do all of this work alone. So we will be reaching out to our partners and exploring ways to expand our partnerships in order to get the work done that's outlined in this plan. In each of the priority areas, we have identified high-level progress indicators. These are very broad-based indicators. We are going to be working at defining more measures as we go. These goals in the plan are very complex, so there isn't one single measure that we can use to see our progress there. And in this plan, we've identified all the master plans and strategies that support the work in each priority area. This is new, and as you just heard with the Active Transportation Master Plan, there are detailed actions, measures, timelines included in all of these master plans and strategies. And so we really wanted to highlight that they do support the work in the strategic plan and that detail lives in the master plans. So the strategic priority areas remain the same. We want a healthy environment and exceptional quality of life, a vibrant and growing economy, and good government. In each of these 4 priority areas, we have identified 3 goals. So in a healthy environment, we want to support environmental sustainability and resilience in our community. We want to protect and preserve natural areas, including green spaces, waterways, parks, trails, and farmlands, and increase waste diversion and resource recovery. As you can see in the plan, there are specific actions under each of those goals. I won't go into the detail on those today. So in an exceptional quality of life, the goals are to increase affordable and attainable housing, improve the health and well-being of residents, ensure a range of programs, services, and supports are available and accessible to those in need. A vibrant and growing economy. We want to build economic development initiatives to support and expand existing businesses, attract new businesses, and expand local employment opportunities. Improve and expand critical and transformational infrastructure, and encourage sustainable growth and development. And then under good government, we want to provide innovative and efficient service delivery for better customer experiences, provide accountable government and responsible management of resources, and build a collaborative, supportive, inclusive, and equitable community. Now, as we go through those priority areas and work towards our goals, we use the guiding principles as a way to help us make decisions. We've kept the same 4 guiding principles. They are common to all of the work that we do. And so we want to make sure that we're being fiscally responsible, open and transparent, that we're partnering and collaborating, and that we're providing service excellence. Earlier, I mentioned some measurement and reporting. We will be establishing measures at various levels, and we will be reporting back to you regularly. So annual reporting to the community through you as council, and there will be a dashboard on our website that will be updated regularly. So next steps for the draft strategic plan is for you to approve the plan, or if you have changes, we can do that. After we get the approval, we will be developing a communication strategy and staff engagement and rollout process, development of action plans and scorecards. So we will be tracking and measuring our progress. And so we need to develop those measurement and tracking systems as well. So I'm very pleased to have been here today to present you with the draft strategic plan, and I'm very happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I get a motion to receive the presentation. Councillor Richardson, Councillor McDonald. Questions, comments? Councillor Ashmore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Manager Stonehouse, thank you, Brenda, for your presentation. Just you mentioned about transportation, and I know that on the Heritage Committee, and not just the Heritage Committee, but lots of other folks in the public want to see that connectivity with the smaller communities. They felt over time that they've been left out, especially since we discontinued rural transit two terms ago. So I'm just wondering, would that be coming when we do the transportation master plan, or can that be included in this document now that we're really wanting to do this? Like, for example, go, you know, when I'm on Highway 115 coming back on 35, I see that GO bus, it's going to Peterborough. We're missing that GO bus coming here to Lindsay. Are we going to be actively, I don't know, it's not all on us, but it's on the provincial government representation to get this to here, and we've been asking, but just wondering, like, what are your thoughts on getting that go and getting the rural transit? Would that be something that we can put in this document?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, on page 11 of the plan under a vibrant and growing economy, we have improve and expand critical and transformational infrastructure. And within that, we talk about our existing transportation infrastructure, as well as active transportation and transit. Now, each one of those have their own master plans as well. So the details will be in the master plans, but it is included here in the strategic plan. That transportation was something we heard very loud and clear.
Okay, so it does capture it here then. Okay, thanks.
Councillor Warren.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you for the presentation. It was good. I was just wondering, Brenda, what sort of measurements would you be doing and putting up for people to see? That was my first question.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. We are going to spend this year developing those measures. We are going to be working with departments on establishing meaningful KPIs so that we're measuring the right things. This is going to take some time, and we're looking at 2024 as establishing baseline. So we're going to establish some measures, collect baseline data so that we have really good, meaningful measures that we can compare to in future years. So that is one of our next steps, is to develop those measures and the tracking systems for them.
And also, did you reach out to the Environmental Advisory Committee for input into the strategic plan?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, we reached out to all advisory boards, committees of council and task forces to ask for their priorities for the next 4 years. We did not receive anything back from the Environmental Advisory Committee.
Okay, I find that very odd. So, okay, because I know we have been, within the group, have been talking about that. So that's interesting. I'll have to ask Deb Pearson about that. Also, I know I was talking to you about, guiding principles, and whether or not it could be possible that the environment could be a lens as being fiscally responsible, being environmentally responsible also.
Ron?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for the question. And just to clarify, it was a topic of discussion. Certainly, when we look at strategic priorities, we sort of deem those as those universal priorities that we're always balancing, which is why healthy environment is front and center, as well as balancing sort of the economy, quality of life, and our governance. So those are truly the lenses that I think are, again, universal, will be the priority. The guiding principles are more specific to other considerations outside of those four balancing priorities. And they really, truly are sort of more informing lenses for decisions. So managing finances, right? Being fiscally responsible, making sure that we're delivering it through quality services, making sure that we're collaborating with partners and so on. So I see them as still sort of informing. I really don't think that putting a strategic priority into other guiding principles is really what the intent of the structure is of the plan. But I can certainly say that, and it was mentioned by Brenda, the feedback that we got was, again, very consistent and universal across the board. Environment and housing were really top of mind currently with the community, and I believe it's reflective throughout the entire plan.
Well, thank you for that. And I still, myself, not necessarily everybody, but I really truly believe a guiding principle should be the environment, especially these days. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Perry.
Thanks very much, Mayor, and thank you, CAO and Director Manager Stackhouse, for bringing forward the strategic plan draft. And as it is a process that has been engaged, I did notice that in your report, you mentioned the extent of public consultations has been the jump in site. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Right, and CAO, you had mentioned this is our document, and we are public representatives. And I can't help but feel a little bit of frustration. It seems like a bit of an echo chamber sometimes, in that staff have come and said consultation is based on the jump in site, and we at council have said that's not sufficient for consultation with the public. And I'm wondering if there was a plan or something in place to get more broad and accessible public input into the plan before it's approved. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, we don't have any plans at this point for further public consultation. However, if that's council's wish, we are very happy to do so.
Okay, thanks for that. We'll have interested to hear other councillors' views, or perhaps we can discuss that before next council meeting and bring that back. Just a couple of other things. As strategic framework, I mean, it's always informed by the times in which we live. And although there's a lot of good work in here and everything seems to be incorporated, it just feels a bit like a business as usual plan. And I was wondering if there's a way to capture some of the urgency we're now facing with the need for responsible growth and well-managed growth, and how we're able to capture some of that in either timeframes or priority development, those kinds of things. I echo Councillor Warren's sentiment in that, how are we able to also track the plan in addition to, say, a three times a year public report card? Are there action plans, the action plans that will follow? Are those going to be detailed and returned to council as they're developed?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. yes, we will have detailed action plans with measures and timelines. A lot of those are already outlined in master plans and documents like the Housing Pledge. So I believe there is a sense of urgency in a lot of these plans already and in everyone's work plans currently. So as far as the business as usual, I think our business as usual has been urgent for the last few years. So yes, in that case, it is business as usual. But I do understand what you're trying to get at. And I believe that this strategic plan gives us the framework and the overarching view that helps us push those action plans forward.
Thanks for that response, and I hear what you're saying. Urgent has been business as usual, but perhaps that could be captured somewhat better in the strategic plan to reflect the times that especially this council is living and trying to plan in, given that strategic plans are seen as the paramount guiding piece for action and work over the next few years. I guess my last comment or suggestion, as you did mention, this is still, changes are still available, would be under the values section. We have accountability, respect, and teamwork, all excellent values. Obviously, the one that's missing to me is inclusion. Inclusion permeates everything that we've done by council and by the city's mandate to date, and I think should be reflected as one of our core values. This is a public document from which people take their lead, and also as an expression of our values, obviously, as a city, what we take seriously, and how we adopt our lenses by which we guide our action. And I think it's very important to be upfront about that. So I appreciate the draft report, subject to perhaps some amended ways forward or some language as these things often evolve before approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, and I appreciate what Councillor Perry is saying. I was just wondering if we're going to be doing some thinking in the next 2 weeks. You're talking about broad input. Do you have any suggestions?
Sure. I think any type of public consultation, I'd be willing to assist in that. A couple of town hall meetings never hurt, or open houses to shop the strategic plan around, those kinds of things. I received some input from a few constituents since this was posted online on Wednesday, right? And again, as councillors, I know at this table, we've often talked about jump in alone. Jump in is great, it's a tool, but my impression from council has been it's not sufficiently not sufficient on its own to be considered consultation, especially for something, as you said, CEO, with such a large, important document such as a strategic plan that guides our work and that we own as councils, as publicly elected officials.
Councillor Smeaton.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, through you. It's interesting. I came from the same place as you in the beginning, the business as usual. Interesting. And then as I came to a very different conclusion. So I'm looking forward to the chat over the next few weeks. My conclusion was I started looking at all the different plans, the different master plans, and was there the check boxes within those plans for very specific things. And I found I was very satisfied that the answer is yes, that those ongoing committees and task force and all those things that are part of the different domains do tend to do the checks and balances that perhaps you would expect to see here, perhaps. And then I also just digested it, and I'll be honest, I don't think much got missed. It's broad, and that's the concern. You have two concerns that I would, so one concern that you have that I came to a different conclusion is the broadness. I became satisfied. I started saying to myself, okay, so if I had a checkbox, what's missing? And I couldn't come up with much. Not that you said it would, the other was the jump in, and you know that I've probably been the loudest about the jump in's not enough. So in this case, I just think it arrived at a really good document. So I'm looking forward to chatting over the next couple of weeks about if the need is more, because I too had conversations with constituents, and I'll just finish by saying that one of those conversations had a very profound ending, that perhaps the actual goal that we were looking for, if we went to a committee level, and it was a very specific item, we might arrive at the desired goal faster with more impact, were it not part of this. That decision hasn't been made, but it was a conversation that opened up a really interesting train of thought, which is sometimes the broadness is a good thing in a strategic plan, because we have those other plans and other committees to be doing the checks and balances, and you don't disagree with that. But that, I agree, a good conversation to have over the next 2 weeks before we iron it down for sure. Thanks.
Councillor Ashmore.
Yeah, just to comment, Mr. Mayor, like I think that, like Councillor Perry had mentioned, and I know that the jump in brought in a lot of good comments, but I feel that, you know, we have to get this right, and we're just about a 95% there. It's a great document, but we do need more public input. This basically is your constitution of your municipality. You're following it. That's how I look at it anyways, your strategic plan. It's your constitution, if I could use that word. I think that sort of describes it. So we have to get this 100% right, and I think if we engage the public a bit more, even if it takes a month or so, that's just my opinion, but 2 weeks is kind of pushing it, kind of a tight timeline, because I know, for example, the Agricultural Advisory Committee, they want to submit a few comments, and I just think it's going to be tight to do that. So we're all going to be trying to put in additions at the last minute on the 30th, and I just think that perhaps we could give a bit more time.
Thank you. Councillor Perry.
Just for a second time, Mayor, I know that the difficulty with these strategic plans usually isn't what to put in. You know, it's what to keep out, what you have to narrow and focus. So we want to make sure that our public consultations, if we go down that route, are sufficiently tailored and structured in that, you know, the strategic plan is important, but it's not the end of the story. In fact, it's the beginning. And as you mentioned, there are strategic plans. There are other, which are cited in the plan, which I thought was excellent, which talks about other master plans. Just a couple of quick questions now. Could you repeat in terms of the accountability, whether the action plans and the results will come back to council each time, or will it simply be the report cards 3 times a year? And second, I'm assuming as council has dominion over its own agenda, we would be able to take, you know, priorities from here and do a check-in or do a prioritization or direct staff to take certain actions with regard to this at the will of council, correct? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, we will be establishing the measures and action plans. Those are the work plans for the departments. So if council wants to see those on a regular basis, if that's your wish, we can do that. The scorecards are going to outline those measures, and we will have, you know, red, yellow, green, so we can see where we're at with those, so that we look at things regularly and can bring any concerns to you if things are not on track. So that's the idea of the measurement, is to really hold us accountable to the results that you're looking for with various projects. And as I mentioned, with those master plans and strategies, a lot of those are already outlined. So that should give us a good start.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. All in favor? And that's passed. There's also a report that goes with the strategic plan, and it is that the Kawartha Lake Strategic Plan 2024-2027 contained in Appendix A to the report, CAO 2024-001, be approved, and that this recommendation be brought forward to council for consideration at the next regular council meeting. Is there a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Richardson. Councillor Joyce. Discussion. All in favor? And that's passed. Moving on, we now come to controversial consent matters at Committee of the Whole. I have one extraction. Are there any other extractions? There's 3 reports on here.
Councillor Warren withdrew her extraction.
Oh. Councillor Warren withdrew her extraction. So consent matters are that all the proposed recommendations shown in section 7.1 of the agenda be approved by the Committee of the Whole in order that they appear on the agenda, sequentially numbered, and forwarded to council for consideration at the next regular council meeting. I have a mover and seconder for that. Councillor McDonald, Councillor Warren. All in favor? And that's passed. What? You have your hand up. What was your?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to, I didn't know the process, so it'll just wait till council then to make comments on all those memos then. Is that correct?
No, we're going to do the memos now. The only thing we did was the reports. Now we're going to do the memos.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Okay. Item 8 is memorandums, and the first one is a memorandum regarding a joint venture between the City of Kawartha Lakes and the Ministry of Transportation to reestablish the streetlight at 929 Cottingham Road, Township of Emily. Councillor Richardson, did you wish to speak to it?
I would, thank you very much. It's been brought to my attention by Director Rojas that I may have got ahead of myself a little bit on this memo. The warrant has already been done by staff, and it is not warranted as the recommendation. However, for me, I would like it to be reinstalled and us to work with MTO for the following reasons. It's a community fixture light there in the corner. It's a Sentinel light, which is dusk till dawn. It was a private light that was owned by the owner, but Hydro was not kept up the payment, so Hydro is disconnecting. This corner is very dark off Highway 7 with approximately 45 homes in that 1 kilometer stretch off of 7, and it is a community connection. So I did take a drive out and to see if it was needed, or it is, to be quite honest with you, because you're coming off of 7 and it's quite dark. I also want to point out and highlight that this is also the busy connection to our trellis bridge at Orange Corners. So at this time, there's a want in the community to have this street light kept going, and I support that, and I think it could be maintained through our street light program at this time, and I'm looking for support.
So you want it to go forward as printed?
Well, I think I have to make an amendment with the staff conduct a traffic count and provide statistical analysis of a warranted streetlight because it's already been done. It's already been done by staff.
So we'll remove the second that?
Yes.
Okay, so the motion is that the memorandum from Councillor Richardson regarding a joint venture be received, that staff report back by Q2 2024, and that this recommendation be brought forward to council for consideration at the next regular council meeting. Is that it?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, and that's your motion. Seconder, Councillor Smeaton. Director Rojas wishes to weigh in.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The background is that this was a private light that was taken down. Putting that aside, and it's also within an MTO right-of-way. So not city jurisdiction, MTO jurisdiction. Staff have already done the warrant, as Councillor Richardson mentioned, and in accordance with our policy. So we have a streetlight policy, CP 2018-018, that utilizes the Transportation Association of Canada streetlight warrant at rural intersections. So we did that warrant, and it did not pass. It scored a 94. Just for context, a score of 120 is a potential partial illumination at an intersection, and a score of 240 is a full illumination at an intersection. So this scored a 94, so it didn't pass the warrant as per the policy. Nevertheless, council could direct staff to ignore the warrant and put up the light anyways. So there isn't a need to report back, because my report's going to say it scored a 94, here's a policy, it's not warranted. So if council wishes to put an unwarranted street light up, you just have to give us the direction to do that and the appropriate funding source.
Thank you. Councillor Joyce, you...
Yes, Director Rojas, how do you measure the warrant, and what's the difference between partial illumination and full? Things are lit or not, so explain that, please.
Okay, so the first part of your question, the Transportation Association of Canada has a worksheet for a warrant. It consists of 13 different criteria under 4 different categories. So the 4 categories would be geometric factors, so the hills and crests of the road, the sight lines, operational factors, environmental factors, and collision factors. So you punch it all into the worksheet and it spits out a number. And based on that number, it's either warranted for a partial illumination or in full elimination. Difference between partial and full is coverage. So in a urban greenfield subdivision, we do illumination calculations with coverage. So each light has a halo around it that does full coverage for a couple reasons. Because when you're driving, your pupil of your eye dilates with the light. So you want a consistency, which is full illumination, so that your pupil stays consistent as a driver. So partial illumination is one light here, and then some darkness, and then one light somewhere else, and then some darkness. So that's sort of the difference with partial and full is. So it's the uniformity of the light throughout the roadway, right? So there are some pros and cons to partial based on those 4 different groups of criteria that I mentioned. And again, this is all governed by the Transportation Association of Canada in accordance with our streetlight in accordance with the municipal Kawartha Lakes Streetlight Policy CP 2018-010.
Thank you. You said it scored a 90, I think you said 94?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, it scored a 94, but this is, I have mixed feelings. So we have some historic lights that were up on MTO highways that people just got used to it, right? They are accustomed to it, even though it's not warranted. Historically, it's been there. There was one on 35, closer down to Ponypool Road, that got taken out, and council decided, even though it's not warranted, let's put it back up as an enhanced level of service, right? Just because it doesn't meet the warrant, which is our level of service, doesn't necessarily mean you can't go above and beyond. It's council's desire. There is a cost associated with it. It's not free, but it's ultimately council's decision. What I'm speaking to is the memo, because the memo says, do the warrant and report back. I'm just telling you what I'm going to report back to you. So I just want to cut to the chase and either ask council to either put it in or not put it in.
Thank you. I just need to understand the process, and thank you for that.
I would recommend that we leave it as is with council, with staff reporting back, because we're going to need the cost on it and timelines and those kinds of things. So I think it should be a report back, and I appreciate what Director Rojas is saying about what he's going to tell us about the technical side of it. And, you know, that's what happens when you ask an engineer a question, is that's what you get. So, Councillor McDonald.
Yeah, through you. That was my question right there. Before we have to keep on talking about this, just tell us what it's going to cost. Okay, is it $10 or is it $10,000? Like, how can we make a decision today? The light was already there. They just unhooked it. My understanding is they can just hook it back up. So they had it there for years. It sounds pretty simple, but maybe it's not. But anyway, get back to us and tell us what the cost is, and we can make the decision then.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson.
So I'm going to cut to the chase and say that, yes, come back with the cost so we know where we're going. I'm fine with that. I also want to flesh out that this light was already there. And I know you talk about community getting used to it, but it is a very well-traveled road, and it is access to 48 homes right off the corridor there. So, and also, I wrote a memo in 2019 to put a new street light in on Porter Road and 7, and it's still not up. So let's talk about process sometime. So I'm looking for direction to move forward.
Thank you. Councillor Perry.
Surely a new streetlight isn't going to break the city's bank. I mean, I appreciate the value of warrants. I don't think they can be the only factor in terms of how these decisions are made. They're very informative, but I think this is a classic case in which the elected official level brings in the people aspect. And Director Rojas referred a bit to that in terms of the historic value and his being torn, perhaps as an engineer and a resident, who's to say. But again, I'm not sure, in my opinion, if a referral back to staff is required and more time, I'm happy to support the motion as is, but I'll leave it, of course, to the mover and the seconder to decide and be at the discretion of the wards councillor. Thank you.
Did you want to sum up, or you're okay?
I think we talked it to death. We got a lot of information today, so let's move forward and get that cost back.
Okay, we have a mover and seconder. All in favor? And that's passed. Next memo is a memorandum regarding calcium chloride for gravel roads. Councillor Richardson.
I had nothing to do on the Christmas break. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to this. I am asking staff to bring a report back to the calcium chloride program for our gravel roads. As we know, there's roughly 900 kilometers of gravel roads in City of Kawartha Lakes, and a possible adjustment to the calcium chloride program could lead to savings in the long run because it does reduce grading, material replacement, and labor. We've seen some very harsh heat the last few summers. We've seen more thaw freezes. And the last update we did get from regarding our calcium program, it was 2017. So I'm thinking just because of things have changed, especially with the new ditching complement coming and moving in-house, you know, we'll be able to catch up on some of those outstanding drainage issues that we've had. And by maybe investing and adjusting the calcium chloride program, we have an opportunity to stabilize some of those road surfaces, because we do, and we have learned that calcium chloride, you know, it is resistance to moisture. It binds your road for your summer season, but it also binds your road in your winter season as well. So for me, I'm thinking if we can have a report back by Q3 2024 before we start the next budget process, I think this ward, this particular memo will, you know, help all of our wards across the City of Kawartha Lakes if an adjustment is needed. And I'm just looking for the support on this. Thank you.
And you did have a conversation with Director Robinson?
I did, and we, you know, he says one thing, I say one thing, you know, he's a technical, and, you know, if this is working, then show us, demonstrate it that it is working. We don't need to make an adjustment at this time.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for Councillor Perry? Did you wish to speak to it?
Just anything that, you know, is innovative and can maybe help our roads, that sounds like good to me, so I support the motion.
Councillor Ashmore.
Thank you. Just a question through you to Director Rojas, because with graveling being in the engineering section, we all want our roads, and they do. It does provide a seal to the road. However, if we don't have enough gravel on these roads, then we're not able to slope them. We're not able to grade them. So the problem is we don't have enough gravel. And I've seen so many roads that they look really nice. They're graded in June, July, and then the calcium chloride's applied, and then we have potholing because within a matter of a month, which is too bad, really, because you put all that money in invested into it, and you're back to square one. So, but the issue is that we don't have the slope to begin with on these roads, and that's why we talked about this. Actually, I talked with Director Robinson about it. Do we not need to get these bases built up first on the gravel roads, and then once we get that would prevent all these potholes from coming back so quickly like they do, because the gravel is not there. Like, we just don't have it there, the base, and therefore we can't slope it properly with the graders. Just a question.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So I'll try to answer the first half of it. So we do have a gravel capital program where we re-gravel the road. Similar to resurfacing an asphalt road, there's a life cycle for gravel roads. And we established that our gravel roads need fresh gravel or new gravel between 8 to 10 years. So that's where engineering comes in. We reshape the road, we add new gravel in, and then it's crowned properly, and then we're done for 8 to 10 years until we hit it again. In between those years, it's a maintenance issue. So Public Works regrades the road, not re-gravel, regrades the road, reditches the road, and applies calcium chloride to the road for dust suppression. Again, through the capital program, every 8 to 10 years, we do a betterment on the gravel road. So I'm not sure if that answers your question. How we maintain the road, I might leave to Director Robinson to answer.
Well, my question is like, it's just that every year, I see this more prevalent, and once we apply calcium chloride, it only lasts for about a month. Not so much the dust control, but it's just that the condition of the road, due to the fact that we don't have enough base on it, we can't grade it. We don't have the 2 to 4% slope. So basically it's defeating the whole purpose, and it's not say it's wasting money. We want the calcium chloride, we want more, but we need the gravel to build this base up. That's basically what I'm trying to get at. I know we're limited to our equipment, but everything kind of works together here. But I know it's kind of a complicated question, but and engineering and public works, they work hand in hand, so we need to work together and see if we can get this figured out.
Director.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. I think we're all saying the same thing. Road maintenance is a difficult process. Capital improvement to the road and applying an additional gravel on the road does aid with maintenance. We obviously within operations are responsible for grading the roads when they fall out of minimum maintenance standards, expectations and compliance. We do the best we can with the materials and resources that we have. There are some roads out there that have a minimal gravel base to them, and we can't cut in too deep for fear of pulling in other types of material like clays and organics that might be in the bases. So we do the best we can with the resources that we have. But as the capital program continues to improve those roads, the ability for us to maintain those roads continues to improve as well.
Did you have something more?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, just as a follow-up, we do have for 2024 a program where we're going to drop a whole bunch of boreholes citywide on our roads, which would aid in prioritizing the base. So we're going to drop boreholes all over the place in order to determine what that compensation of the base is, and then focus more on the roads with the higher need for base repair. So I think that should aid in prioritizing which base of the roads are in greater need.
Councillor Joyce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, this is a very interesting memo. Got a question and then a comment to Director Robinson. If I recall correctly, we do all the calcium chloride application is contracted out. We don't do it ourselves in-house, or am I wrong on that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the councillor. So the application is contracted out. Our staff do support that activity by having grading equipment there available and making sure the road's prepped in order to apply that. Obviously, we don't want to apply a calcium chloride onto a compacted hard base. It'll just simply run off. So we typically prep the gravel roads ahead of the calcium application so that it has the opportunity to soak in and compact and set up that base properly.
That's what I thought. In your report, if you can, kind of a long term, I think it would make sense if we purchased our own equipment and hired our own staff. If this becomes an intense type of program, and I could be wrong, but just something to take a look at for a long-term strategy.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, that's something we can obviously take a look at. Application is really just hauled tankers. It would be used once a year, and there's not a lot of other use for them. We have water trucks that apply water to certain activities. Wouldn't be able to be used. So it's something we can look at, but I'm not sure that there's a cost-benefit analysis that would support us owning our own equipment for the application of calcium chloride, but we can certainly look at it.
Okay, thank you. I just got the sense this would be more than once a year if we're doing it in a more intense application. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. All in favor? And that's passed. Next memorandum is Councillor Smeaton regarding service club signs. Would you care to speak to it?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you, and my New Year's resolution was to be less verbose, so I have typed, and I will read, and it will be over. Councillor Ashmore brought to my attention a constituent who had concern involving the absence of traditional signage boards, and happened to be a friend of mine, and frequently seen advertising service groups. So this brought to the attention many conversations with many others, and after making inquiries, it was decided that before rumor and different groups recall being overly unnecessary, all these recollections, the simplicity of this memo's intent is to follow proper policy, politely asking staff to report back with needed details and suggestions to help us move forward with a concrete master plan for signs throughout the Kawartha Lakes that will have clear definitions of responsibilities, costs, and so on, should council wish to venture forward.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Perry, did you want to speak to it?
Just very briefly, in honor of Councillor Smeaton's already broken New Year's resolution, just adding that I've had constituents approach me as well on this exact issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McDonald.
Yeah, through you. Thank you. I support that also. I'd like just to extend a little more because when I was on the BIA, we talked about more than just club signs and so on. We need Wayfair. We need everything. I think a master plan for signs, I think, is a great idea. I'm not quite sure, but I think somebody is working on these signs now because we were told a couple of years ago that when we were doing all the revitalization of all the downtowns, that there's going to be Wayfair and so on. So I'm hoping that this has already started, but I think it's a great idea to have a plan for all our communities for signs.
Thank you. Councillor Warren.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Smeaton, for doing this, because I know in Bodcage, all the signs were taken down because they had seen the better days, and they were scheduled many years ago to be replaced and never got done. So I'm really pleased with this memo. Thank you very much.
Was that on Verlem Council?
Not. Well, it was quite a few years ago, gotta say.
Councillor Richardson.
Thank you. And through you, I'm just wondering, well, I can leave my question to next week, I guess, because I was just thought we did have a bit of a sign strategy with the maintenance program, like talked about in the last couple of years. And I know that with that, we had that cost of it's 50-50, with the group. If not, maybe we can get some more details on that as well.
Okay. Councillor Joyce.
So I forgot to turn my button off. Deputy Mayor McDonald voiced my need of all communities. We have Woodville, we have Oakwood, we have Little Britain with community clubs. Thank you.
Where does signage fall?
Many places.
Yeah.
Maybe if I could, through you, Mr. Mayor, and great question, the question was where do the signs fall as a service? And you've actually talked about 3 different types of signs, right? Wayfinding signs, community signs generally that are identifiers, and service clubs, which is the subject of this memo, which talks about highlighting specific service clubs in certain communities. I think if you're okay with it, Mr. Mayor, I think what we will take back on this is a general report back on the various types of signs, what's the strategy for service club signs as noted by the councillor's memo, but looking at it sort of broadly and citywide. And I don't know if you want a wording to that effect to update, but essentially it would be reporting back by Q2 for service club and general community signs, I would say in Kawartha Lakes, as opposed to just Lindsay, if you're okay with that.
Yeah. Seconder, okay with it? Okay. Did the clerk get that? Thank you. Councillor Ashmore.
Just a final question while we're on this, either directed to Councillor Smeaton or Deputy Mayor McDonald or Director Shanks. I believe the fancy word catalyst of this whole thing was the two big signs in Lindsay, the one on Kent Street West and Lindsay Street South. And these were great signs over the years, and now they've been taken down because of their physical condition, but the expectation was that these signs would be replaced. And the service groups that had their signs on those were really wondering when this would be. And I think it was like 2 years ago they were taken down, or 3 years ago. Just wondering what the status is on that replacement.
Who's your question?
Mr. Smeaton has the answer here.
Sure, happy to if it's easy. That's exactly the purpose of the memo, is to get all that information back from staff and take the opportunity to broaden it to the whole city. So that answer will be there.
Yeah, through you,
Deputy Mayor?
just one more comment on that. Both those were in my ward. They were rotten and probably fell apart. That's why they were taken down. Plus, some of the service clubs that are on there not even on there anymore, and those service clubs aren't there. So it's a good opportunity to now look at all, like what Mr. Taylor said, is let's look at all the signs and have a master plan of how we're going to handle that. So,
Yep. Ms. Muster, I see you're online, did you want to comment at all?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nope, this is very clear. Sounds great.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. All in favor? And that passed. Last memo is a memorandum regarding Community Centre Road, Dunsford. Councillor Ashmore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just would like to get support for this, please. This road is in quite dire shape right now, and just to get it on the 5-year roads plan would be great. I've been approached not only from the residents in Dunsford, but the firefighters themselves have pleaded to me, like, we can't even get our equipment out. If we get it out, it's damaging the equipment, and I know the fire chief could back me up on that. So, but this road, Community Centre Road, it's an important part for people in Dunsford who get to Highway 36. So it's used by everybody, and just to get it on the radar would be great. Thank you.
Just to be clear, I met with the firefighters out there, and that wasn't their comments on the road. Their only comment on the road did not speak to impacting service. They spoke to me when I was there and said they were concerned about the equipment driving on the road. I think also that we have a new 5-year roads plan coming forward in about 2, 3, 4 months. And I think we should wait till then before we add anything to the 5-year roads plan, but that's my opinion, and we'll see where council is with it. So you have movers or a seconder for the memo. Going once, going twice. Fails. Does engineering wishes to speak?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, just for clarification, it's not a new 5-year roads plan. It's an interim report to the 5-year roads plan. That is scheduled to come at the March 5th Committee of the Whole.
So it would be reasonable at that time to look and see if this road is on there, and if it's not on there, then council could request that it be added at that time. Is that correct?
through you, Mr. Mayor, correct. We are looking at all past council resolutions, all decision units that did not make it into the budget, and we're going to address all those. We're going to do a couple things. We're going to report on the first 2 years of our 5-year road plan, see how we did, and then give you the residual on what is going to be done in the next 2-3 years. Right. Again, that will be coming on March 5th, and we're purposely bringing it to committee of the whole first, so that we could have a discussion, and then we can make amendments as required at the following council meeting.
Thank you. So I think we need to receive the memo anyway. So Councillor Ashmore moving to receive it. Is there a seconder to receive it? Councillor Warren. Okay. There's 3 people who say they want to talk. They still want to talk. It's not going. Councillor McDonald.
Yeah, through you. I have a couple of comments on this. That we have like a 5-year interim road, March 5th. There it is coming out. We know winter and spring also does cause a lot of damage to roads, and we might have to maybe make some adjustments. But I also want to make sure that everybody understands there's 8 people sitting around this room here at the table that we must all try to work together to find out which roads are the worst and what's better. There's 8 of us here. Okay, we have a budget we agreed on. We just passed our budget. Why are we already starting the first week of this year trying to change the budget? So we have a budget. We have to try to stick to it and stay within our means. So just going forward with these memos with roads, I think we really need to look at our process of what's going on here. There's 8 people sitting around this room here, and we all have roads and we all have concerns. So just bringing a memo to council all the time, just saying I want to get the road in, I don't think is the answer. I think it's something that we should put together of how we're going to handle each area, and maybe there's some areas that maybe there's more roads in other areas than some other councillors. But I think it's something that's worth definitely a conversation to be talked about. Thanks,
Councillor Perry.
Thank you. And precisely on that point from Deputy Mayor McDonald, this is precisely the reason why I brought the memo last fall that we passed unanimously, that we can get an update on how the 5-year roads plan is working as an approach. Are there other approaches that might serve us better? What other programs are available? How do we include both the depoliticization and the transparency of the process so that we don't wind up, for example, horse trading roads at the end of a budget meeting with a pot of money, right? So that we don't kind of see roads come on a political process by memo, because my understanding is the 5-year plan is based on engineering data and expertise, correct? All right. So every time a road is added through the political level, you could say that erodes, pun intended, the integrity of the 5-year plan. And perhaps there are other avenues, which we'll see in the memo in March, or when we have these discussions, where we can bring things, or a joint approach could be even on the table, as Deputy Mayor McDonald is alluding to, not to put words in his mouth. But that's what I would like to see, and that's what I would plead to wait for, our new way of doing roads, informed by this March memo that we all passed to come unanimously. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Joyce.
Ditto. I wholeheartedly endorse Deputy Mayor McDonald and Councillor Perry's comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson.
I want to pass on my same sentiments. I think, the reason Councillor Perry brought that memo was to make sure that we're moving forward, reprioritizing properly based on that data and for proper asset management. So I think we have to wait to that report and go from there. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The intention of this memo was not to circumvene anything. This is my method of doing things. Put it in a memo, be very transparent, put it on this table so everybody can talk about it. I don't go and have separate meetings with staff on what road. I don't know what's horse playing or horse jockeying, whatever it is. Horse trading, that's it. I don't do any of that. So I'm not saying that anybody else does, but I think that you're right, there's 8 members of council here, and I would support other members of council putting roads. If you have roads, bring them here, bring them to the table. That's always been my way. And I think that's the best way. You're transparent. If it doesn't get on the 5-year list, it doesn't. But we, as representatives, have to bring these things forward. I want to. because I'm listening to the people and I want to have it on the table. I want to be transparent and at least make an effort to say that I am on this particular road. And there's other roads too. But I think there's nothing wrong with what I did. In fact, what I would propose and what we should be doing is having roads tours, so we don't have to have all council go on a roads tour. We could split it into 3 separate areas, east, central, and west. I've proposed this. I think this would be the great way because we could catch all these roads that we're not getting. I would propose that. I think that's the best way because we're not catching these roads. And so my intentions were good here to get this out in the open and be transparent and listen to the constituents. But and I think, like I said before, I would support any other memo that comes on. Not everybody's going to make it into the 5-year plan, but if you make an effort, I think that's that goes a long way.
Councillor Perry?
I don't think anyone's questioning anyone's intention here. What I will question, though, is perhaps memos aren't the best way to do this business. That's all. And that we'll know more about that when we hear back from staff and can evaluate the processes that are in place. Maybe there will be room for memos. Maybe there are different, equally as transparent as a priority, ways of doing roads better, which was the intent. And I know that there's a support from Public Works and from engineering to look at that bigger picture and support that activity, which has been, and there's been help given that to date. So I just wanted to specify those things, that it's really revamping the process based on transparency, of course, and inclusion, and there isn't just one way of doing things. And perhaps memo to memo, week to week isn't the best way to do it. As Deputy Mayor McDonald had mentioned, we shall see. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor McDonald.
Yeah, thank you. And I like those comments also, Councillor Perry. I think there could be a different way, and maybe we come to a point that if we know there is some dollars in the budget at the end of the year, then maybe if we hit a top 10 roads that we all can see this top 10 and we go have a look at them, then we can evaluate them or something like that. I think there's many ways that we can probably change the process here, that it doesn't come to because if you're just going to write a memorandum all the time, it's pretty simple for all council just to bring memorandums to council all the time to put them on the 5-year program. So, and I don't think that's the way. So thanks for your comments.
Thank you. Councillor Ashmore.
The final question, I guess, so the question I'm putting out there, and I appreciate the comments here, where is our role then as elected representatives? Do we not have any input in these decisions? So I'm just putting it out there. Like, I mean.
Well, you're getting an update on the 5-year roads plan in March. That's your opportunity to look at the roads that are on there and make comments on the ones that are there and the ones you think should be there. There's also opportunities at budget time. There's opportunities, I think, to talk to staff about roads in your area and get their agreement that there are problems there. But as Councillor Perry points out, we're getting a report back that's going to tell us if there's a better way to do things. And that's what we're looking for. So, okay. Councillor Perry?
Yes, just on that, Mayor, we're masters of our own agenda. I'm sure there'll be roles for public elected officials moving forward. In fact, it empowers us, if I could put that to Councillor Ashmore, because we'll be able to devise and look at and determine our own transparent and accountable process for our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor to receive the memo. All in favor? And that passes. And me, we're receiving the memo. You have to receive the memo. Got to do something with it. Thank you. I have a motion to adjourn. Councillor Perry, Councillor Smeaton, all in favor, and that's passed. Thank you all. By the way, Happy New Year, everyone.
Hola.